Relations and Advocacy Committee together today. It's January 18th, 2022. The time is 2:03 p.m. First item on our agenda is to approve the minutes. Are there any changes that anybody is going to advocate for in changing the minutes as presented at this meeting today? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the prior committee meeting. And I did send those minutes out to you, just so you got refreshed. December 15th, 2021 meeting.
I'll make that motion, John.
Motion
Chairman.
made by Supervisor Driscoll to approve, seconded by Supervisor Conover. All those in favor of the meeting as presented today, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Pass. Next item. There's no action items. Rules of the board. I also sent this out to committee members. Rules of the board. Some of the changes in front of you are in color, red and blue. So let's go to the first page, page 2 of 9. A lot of that is just updates in accord with what's happened by law. 502 weighted votes. Local law number 9 of 2021. And in the same paragraph, paragraph number 1, as provided by local law number 1 of 1968, the chair shall appoint the finance chair who, in case of the absence, incapacity, or inability of the chair to act during the term, shall perform functions, powers, duties of the chair within the limits of statute. And then you have the regular meeting schedule at the bottom of the page. Any thoughts anybody have on page 2 of 9 of the rules of the Board of Supervisors, proposed rules of the Board of Supervisors? Committee first. Seeing none from committee, others? Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I am not on the committee. I do have 2 things on this page. One is there was a concern this year about the organizational meeting kind of late in January. So I was wondering if that date should be moved up to something like January 2nd or 3rd. And then the other item was our night meeting is really, I thought the intent is to try to allow people to come after work, which a 4 p.m. meeting would not accommodate people coming after work for those who worked until 5. So those are, my suggestion would be that we hold that at 6. And that we move up the date of the organizational meeting.
The 2 suggestions are the organizational meeting, which is scheduled for January 15th. Do you think that should be earlier?
Well, it has to take place before.
Or where do you see that on page 2 of 9? The setting of the organizational meeting.
It's in the 3rd line of paragraph number 1.
Oh, it's scheduled for the 8th day of January. All right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Strauss.
It just said,
I'm sorry, that, it says it's shall be not later than the 8th day of January. So
Right.
it gives us the flexibility to set that where we need it to be, but it can't be any later than the 8th.
Thank you for the clarification. Is everyone happy with the current wording that it will be no later than January 8th?
I don't have a problem with that. Wasn't it the 6th this year when we had it? So,
Yes.
I mean, we can have it any of those other days, I'm assuming other than January 1st, but no later than the 8th seems appropriate to me, but.
All right. Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you. I brought that concern up earlier, by the 8th, we were the 6th, but that kind of leaves us open for 6 days. Now, I know a lot of the other supervisors are being sworn in on the 1st, but why we can't have provision in there is, the first working day after the first, sometimes it falls on a weekend or that, or working it down because we're vulnerable to being able to make decisions in that, especially in cases of an emergency, and especially this year, I had concerns because of the pandemic. So I understand having the flexibility, how can you word that to get it as soon as possible after the first?
All right, well, next year, 2023, the 6th is a Friday. We could change it to no later than the 6th day of January. I think that would give us 5 for 2023. The 8th day would be Monday. So the 6th day of January 2023 is a Friday. So how about that? Would that be an improvement?
Well, it is, but it's still keeping us vulnerable for a couple days of being able to meet in an emergency case.
Well, what do you suggest then?
I know a lot of the supervisors are sworn in on the first, correct?
Yeah.
So, the next day after the first, or the first, like say it's on a Saturday, so it'd be Monday would have been the 3rd, you know what I'm saying, if it happened to fall that way. Because the reason why we don't have it on the 1st is all the other supervisors are getting sworn in on their town on the 1st.
All right, well,
Chairman, like if,
yeah, Amanda?
Just one other point. This says that it doesn't have to be set, or it has to be set no later than the 8th, but every December, the board authorizes a resolution which states the date of the organization meeting. So you could choose to leave this like it is and then deal with this every year in December when you're closer to the January organization meeting. It has to be set by resolution.
All right, understanding that. Any further thoughts?
Just-
Yeah, Supervisor Driscoll?
thank you, Chairman. Just very quickly, I would suggest that we keep it at the 6th, but look to do it the first Tuesday or Wednesday. I wouldn't want to have people coming back from a long weekend and coming right into a committee meeting. I'd like to give some of the staff up here an opportunity to maybe, some kinks and that type of stuff. So a day's planning after the 1st, so that in this case, for 2023, it would be either Tuesday or Wednesday, and that would be the 2nd or 3rd, I believe. 2000.
All right, well, as Amanda pointed out, we'll be
Doing that in
setting that
December,
in
but yeah.
December. But for now, if I make it the 6th, no later than the 6th, that would be better than the 8th, right?
Yes.
Yes.
All right,
Yep.
so let's make that change to the 6th day of January, and then we'll set the firm date in December.
Chairman Stroud, may I just make one comment? This, if I may,
Yes.
this ties in, I think, a little bit to the holdover issue as far as the chairman's powers and duties after December 31st. So my understanding of what the concern may be is that there's no chairman in place earlier in that first week of the year. So, and I only make this as a suggestion, it's up to the board to decide what direction they're interested in going. But if there were, if the organizational meeting was held the second business day of the year, that might accommodate the concern of having the organizational meeting close enough to the beginning of the year so there's not much of a gap. And then you don't have to worry about fixing a specific day or coming back and doing it on the first day, business day of the year. If it merely said whatever the second business day of the new year is, that would be the organizational day. This way you're not, the rules are kind of set up to be in place, hopefully in future years as well, because there's not a specific day or date set in them. So you wouldn't need to make any further changes to it. But again, I just make that as a suggestion with the concern that I heard at the end of 2021 being who's able to make decisions during that interim period between December 31st and the organizational meeting.
That seems reasonable to me. Committee? How's that,
I don't have a problem.
Don?
I'm good.
Ron? Right? Okay with that?
Yeah, but you know, you said it by resolution anyways, so I don't see what the big fuss is. To be honest with you.
I don't either, but it seems like.
Yes, thank you. You know, thank you, Larry, for bringing that up. I do believe, our presidency, it's, you know, it's held on a certain day and the president holds over until that day of the inauguration. So, I mean, I don't have a problem at least having the chairperson do a holdover until the organizational meeting in case of an emergency to make a decision until we're all sworn in. I mean, I go right back to protecting ourselves, you know, 24/7.
Yeah. Well, what's the will of the committee? Yeah, Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you. I was on the Zoom link with my hand up for a little while, and I just wanted to, I didn't hear the end of the county attorney's description about the concern about there being a lack of a chair for 6 days. But what I did hear was Supervisor Driscoll talk about wanting to have this a few days after the first, although in committee, we did have a discussion about having it perhaps the evening of the first or the second. Washington County does have theirs on January 2nd, the first Monday. I just think that for continuing of operations, that might be a better solution. And I wish that the board would consider just making sure that gap is closed. So in the event that a chair hasn't been selected, or perhaps that you don't reach a majority vote, you have some extra time to call another meeting.
Well, one of the arguments is that we can have this conversation in December. Or we can have it now, I guess.
May-
So I assume,
May I-
Supervisor Seaver, that you're saying the first business day of the year will be the organizational meeting?
The first, I understand the town supervisors have commitments on the first of the year, but until we're sworn in, you're acting without a sworn in board and a sworn in chair. So if you have it on the second, of every year, it does give you 5 days or so till the 6th to continue to call those meetings until such time if you do not have a chair selected on the first or on the second. But that is a gap in services that have been identified by our county attorney. And I think we're smart to listen to trying to resolve here and now while we're talking about the rules of the board for next year. So again, other counties have it on the second for their board of supervisors. You have half the board here that are not town supervisors. And to Supervisor Driscoll's point in committee at the end of the year, I believe you even talked about how nice it would be to be able to get together on the evening of the first, and have that type of a swearing in. I've also heard suggestions from our county attorney that it would also be nice on the following day to swear in those individuals that are appointed by the board, to have them take an oath and have a ceremony recognizing those appointments as well. So that's the reason for bringing it up here today.
Any thoughts, committee?
Well, personally, I don't think, I'm sorry, John.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm not convinced that January 1st is the ideal day for us to do this, but that's just my personal feeling. The attorney had mentioned the second business day of the year. I don't see why that should be an issue, but like you said, we have to do it by resolution. It gets done in December. So are we going to sit here and hash it over for a half hour and not really act on anything until we get to the December resolution? So.
All right, so I guess the question is, and it seems to me that most people are comfortable with this, and it is an improvement, that we would say that the organizational meeting shall be held no later than the second business day of the year, and we'll affirm that in December.
Yeah, I think that's good.
That's what I'm hearing. That's an improvement over what we have. It seems like everyone's okay with that. All right, do I need to have a vote on that, Amanda, or? Okay. So
We
the
can approve.
wording, the committee seems to think that it should be as followed in the third line of paragraph 1, that the date of the organizational meeting shall be held no later than the second business day of the year. And in accord with council's recommendation. The other suggestion made by Supervisor Bramer was that we make our evening meeting later than 4 p.m. What were you suggesting, Supervisor Bramer? 6 p.m., 7 p.m.?
My suggestion was 6.
All right, well, 6 you could argue is everyone's dinner hour. Most of the other meetings are held at 7 p.m.
7 seems reasonable to me too.
Supervisors, well, any committee members have any thoughts on the matter before I allow others to speak? Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard, although I'm not a member of your committee. I come fully prepared with many questions regarding the standing rules today, which I thought was the purpose of today's meeting, was to go over them here today. As it relates to that time, when we initially started night meetings, many of us were on that board, and we did select an evening meeting, meaning 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, something later, to recognize the SUNY Adirondack graduates, to be able to invite their families, and to be able to have that opportunity to also allow other members of our community that do work to come later in the evening. This year, I heard Supervisor Wild talk quite a bit about wanting to have those meetings, those public hearings later in the evening, not at 4 o'clock. So if there's only going to be one night meeting, which it'd be great to have more, but if there's only going to be one, I would agree with Supervisor Bramer. It would be great to have it in the evening to accommodate families and people who work and work past 4 o'clock.
Well, it's the definition of evening. The question is, should it be 4, 5, 6, or 7? I'm suggesting 7. Yes.
I have no problem with 7, but oftentimes when special events are going on in town, the Chamber of Commerce is doing something. They're starting at 5:30 because they don't want people to go home. So a person working at Glens Falls Hospital who lives in Brant Lake is going to be staying in town, and the earlier they can get to that meeting if they get out at 4 or 5 o'clock. I think we want to keep people recognizing that a number of our up-county people who may be working in the Glens Falls, Lake George, Queensbury region, don't want to go all the way home for dinner and then come back to this area. I would agree with 6. I mean, in my house, I eat dinner between 8 and 9 o'clock, but I'm a little crazy that way. So,
A little late.
yeah.
All right, so
I'm in favor of 6, Don.
6. Frank, 6.
Sure.
Ron, 6. Okay. Any other questions on page 2 of 9, under Schedule A, Rules of the Board of Supervisors? Committee? Outside of committee? All right, let's move on to page 3 of 9, where we'll see in red the updated schedule for county board meetings and keeping the finance chair as the succession person for the supervisor, and then some just instead of noon, close of business and special meeting of. Any thoughts, committee members, on page 3 of 9? Seeing none, I'll allow others. Yes, Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Supervisor Stroh. Again, I appreciate the opportunity. I was coming from a funeral, so I dialed in a couple minutes late. I would like to go back to the first page. You did ask if there were any questions, and I know it's tough to see everyone's hands. I did have a question about page 2 of 9, A2.
What paragraph are you on? A2?
A2.
And what is your question?
My question is that there's a few changes administratively that it's my understanding that the red changes are Amanda, Ryan, and Larry's. In the future, it would be great to have that broken down so we know specifically what one of the lawyers' concerns are, the parliamentarians, and then the county administrator, and that the blue were the county chairman. My question relates to the majority vote at the beginning of every year. And, it's my understanding that with a new term of a board, that it's a majority vote to adopt the rules, but throughout the rest of the term, for that period of 24 months, it's a majority vote or a 2/3 vote. Last year, in order to have the rules passed, it had to be a majority vote. I've had the opportunity to go back through the last 10 years of rules of the board and all of the organizational meetings. As we know, this has been a topic that has been brought up every single meeting last year. What I was wondering is why that can't be a 2/3 majority vote. If it's the fact that the board, this is our Bible for the year, our standing rules. So it would seem to me that we should have a supermajority of the board that would agree with what those rules were, which is why initially, we were hopeful to have a lot of time to go through these and then to also collect all of the different suggestions and offer them. I don't see all those in here, but I certainly respect the fact that that's the opportunity of the current chair and of the administrative staff. So what I would like to propose is then in A2, throughout all of the year, it's a 2/3 majority to adopt the rules of the board. It should be a supermajority of the board that agrees on the rules. Never in the last 10 years has it ever been adopted by just a simple majority. It's always been adopted by a supermajority. So even on those term years where we have a new board, they've always been a 2/3. And I would appreciate an opportunity for our county attorney, should there be additional questions, to weigh in on this. But it's my understanding, the state law, we could say it's unanimous. We could say it's a simple, we could say it's a supermajority. That choice is ours as a board. And so I would just ask that this committee and the full board on Friday, please consider a supermajority, because these rules are so important to every single one of us on the board.
Thoughts on behalf of committee members? That suggestion? I see no interest in going there. All right, committee seems to be happy with the wording majority. Anything else then on page 2? Okay, let's go on to, again, page 3 of 9. As I've already introduced, not too many changes there. Any thoughts or comments on that? Committee folks first. Seeing none. Any outside? Oh, yes. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. On page 3, number 2, in the agenda of the board meetings, I would like to ask for an addition of time for public comment to the beginning of the meeting agendas. I think that affords the public an opportunity to speak at the beginning of the meeting to the full board so that they don't have to wait while we transact the rest of our business.
Okay, thoughts on behalf of the committee on that matter? Including a placement for a privilege of the floor in the beginning of the meeting. Supervisor Distel?
I would support that. I know that in the city of Glens Falls, that's what they do. And I've been to town board meetings in every township in Warren
Okay.
County, and a lot of them do that same thing.
Did not, Supervisor Frazier?
We do ours at the beginning too. We have privilege of the floor, so I don't have a problem with going along with that.
Supervisor Conover, Supervisor.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do so. We'll add, right after introduction and welcome to the guests, a public comment period, I guess, is what you're suggesting. Is that what you're suggesting?
That seems like a perfect spot. Well, after the welcome to guests, public comment.
Okay, we'll add a privilege of the floor and public comment period. We'll keep it at the end too, I assume? So we'll have just two opportunities.
Right.
Okay. Anything else on page 3 of 9? Yes, Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. Supervisor Stroud, could you identify if regular meetings, by that terminology there added in red, regular meetings is just referring to the full board meeting in the second paragraph?
Yeah,
Okay.
as opposed to special meetings?
As opposed to special workshop or committee, that regular meeting just means full board meetings?
Well, it's in red. I think the county attorney contributed to that. Is there any comment from the county attorney?
It's consistent with what appears under B1, which are the regular meetings of the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. So given that question, oh, I'm sorry, if I may ask the question as relates
Yes.
Supervisor Stroud?
Go ahead.
At this particular section, you talk about a quorum. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to discuss. While I appreciate my two questions, or two that were recorded to be provided in the agenda, I did have a question regarding the quorum being present here at the board meetings and consistent with Robert's rules and with the way many other government entities operate throughout the country and the state of New York. Once members are present, have indicated that they are present, that there were two concerns I brought up as it related to quorum. So if now's not the appropriate time to talk about it, that's fine. I don't know where you would talk about it. One being that once you say you're present, if you get up to, make a phone call, use the restroom, whatever it may be, and it's during voting, if you're not here for the voting, that your vote counts in the affirmative. And the other being that Robert's rules specifically, and other NACO was really explicit on this, that if you're here and you say, yes, you're here, but then you leave, it's your responsibility if you're on that committee to be here, and you leave, then you can break quorum and the meetings can end. They had used examples of cases where legislation didn't want to be passed and people would leave the meeting and your quorum would end and you couldn't go forward with any additional work. So there are times that, it can be close to not having a quorum present and all the work, if you haven't got into it, is done because people left. Is it possible at that point in time to say that as soon as a quorum is established as present, that the quorum remains present? Or if you're getting up and you're leaving during a vote, that it's in the affirmative so that it's consistent with Robert's rules?
I think what you're saying is, let's say we have a committee of 7.
This is as it relates to full board only, though, Supervisor Stroud.
Well, let's say you have a board of 20.
Mhm.
Do you need 11 present?
Mhm.
I don't see where that's ever been a problem. We've always had at least 11 present.
It's been very, very close in the past, but particularly during voting is where it's more applicable. Many times people are getting up during voting or different issues, and there's a lot of absent votes.
Well, let's see what the committee says. Is the committee,
Right. Supervisor Stroud, may I just finish that sentence, if that's okay? I wasn't, but thanks. Our county attorney also, I'd like to have him weigh in on a part of the law, I believe it's New York State County Law 153 or 154, that talks about if members are not going to be at meetings, whether it be committee or full board meetings. I've noticed in other boards where they indicate people are excused from meetings, and that also helps establish a quorum. So if you're not officially excused, the state law actually goes so far as to say if that isn't provided in writing to the clerk or to the chair, that you may have an ability to even fine a member for not showing up, which I'm not proposing we do, but many counties have adopted an ability to be excused from a meeting versus just be counted as absent. And I think this would also be an appropriate place for that, but perhaps the county attorney could talk about that more.
county attorney, have any thoughts on that particular matter before I go to committee for their thoughts?
I am opening up section 153 of the county law. There is a provision that talks about imposing a penalty. Just one moment while I look at it.
And just to clarify, mine is a little more pointed towards being excused from a meeting.
I would need to take some time to review that.
Mhm.
Subsection 7 talks about the power to compel attendance by members at regular and special meetings of the board and at committee meetings. And to impose a fine or a penalty. It's actually called a penalty.
Well, let's see what the committee thinks. Imposing a penalty on someone who is not officially excused from a Board of Supervisors meeting. How do you feel about that?
Just a point of order, Mr. Chairman, that wasn't my question. It was about the being excused from a meeting. I indicated that the law went so far as to say you may impose a penalty, but my question was, is it appropriate there to talk about the being excused from a meeting?
Do you feel that supervisors should be excused from a meeting? Anybody in favor of adding wordage that insists that if supervisors are not going to be present at a county board meeting, a regular board meeting, I assume, that you have to be excused? How do you feel about that? Supervisor Disco.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I know since COVID and we all received the opportunity to either come in person or to Zoom in, and we have one board member that I see on the board who is Zooming in this afternoon, and but I don't see his face up there, so I presume that Supervisor Bruno is virtually with us today, but I have no way of knowing whether he's picking himself a sandwich out.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't picking on him, but again, it kind of muddies the water, in my opinion. Tracking down where people are, if they choose the option of or if they're calling in. We're not going to see their picture. We're going to see their phone number, but it confuses things a little bit. And I guess my next question would be, before I give an opinion on that, who is responsible? Is it would they have to get in touch with someone from Amanda's office, I presume, to say, I'm not feeling well, which could be a very possible excuse for not attending, or a family matter came up at the last minute and I'm not going to be able to make it. Certainly, those things happen to all of us at one time or another. So I guess I'm just looking for a little bit more clarification before I make an opinion on it.
Other thoughts, Supervisor Frazier? I thought you had indicated.
Well, I guess maybe I'm confused, but I don't miss very many meetings, but if I miss it, I feel like I have a legitimate reason. I've emailed Amanda before and said, I can't make it in, I'm sick today, or a case where we were gone on vacation for 2 weeks and that happened to be the board meeting day, but still I let somebody know that I wasn't going to be here. But I guess I never thought of, I have to get this official excuse for not being at the board meeting. I didn't look at it that way, so. Learn something new every day.
Yeah. Supervisor Thomas?
You're still absent if you have an excuse. I don't understand. If you're absent, you're absent. I don't.
Right.
Why do you need an excuse?
Any other committee people have thoughts on it? Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you. Perhaps this is a topic that could stay on the agenda to talk about at a future time after our county attorney has time to look at it. There is a difference between absent and an excused absence, and looking at the reorganizational minutes over the last decade and of other counties and recently of Saratoga and Washington County, there is a difference in an excused absence versus an absence, but it also helps, as Supervisor Frazier said, while she notifies the clerk, not everyone does. And then the clerk is also able to determine, is this a date where we may not have a quorum, even with the chair sitting in? And We just had this happen with Health Services Supervisor Frazier last year, where we couldn't move forward with a really important discussion during the pandemic because we weren't aware of what was happening with members that were absent, but not excused absences. So both in regular board and committee meetings, it seems to make sense to have that direct communication. And it's, if you want it to be with the clerk of the board, that's fine. But I do think some type of coordination to ensure that we do have quorums present and that the record does reflect excused. Some people also do record their time for retirement purposes. And I think that is an effective argument for those people that are in the retirement system of whether they're an excused absence or just an absence. It does seem to warrant further discussion.
I agree with you. Let's save that for another day. And let's leave it as is for now. And that's what I'm hearing as the majority say.
Is there an issue which the county attorney's office should look further into or not at this time? And if there is, can we just clarify what that issue is?
The issue is whether there's a desire among the majority or consensus of county board members to, in the event of an absence, it's their individual responsibility to make sure that it is an excused absence. With the thought that perhaps if it's a not excused absence, there may be penalties forthcoming. I don't know. I'm hearing there's no comfort level with the committee. I'm moving forward with that at this time. If it comes up at a future time for discussion, fine. Okay. All right. Anything else on page 3 of 9?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I heard two things. Could we leave that pending on an agenda item in the future to discuss versus it just coming up in the future so that we can continue to, our county attorney had said that he hadn't reviewed that section of the law yet. Seems to me.
I left that open, Supervisor Seaver. I'm saying for the purposes of the object at hand, which is to review the rules of the Board of Supervisors, that discussion is not necessary now, but certainly it can be brought up in the future. All right, hearing nothing more on page 3 of 9, moving over to page 4 of 9. It discusses when regular meeting or special meeting of the board 72 hours prior to the notice time for such adjourned or special meeting when practicable, but no less than the time period prescribed by Public Officers Law 103, subsection 3. Next paragraph, all resolutions timely filed with the board as set forth. Any resolution timely filed with the clerk but not approved to establish committee structure in advance of the board meeting shall require a waiving of the rules by the board during the regular meeting, aside from those resolutions which are considered to be administrative or procedural or of an emergency nature and are authorized by the board chair, standing committee chair, county administrator, county attorney, clerk of the board. And then any member of the board may make a resolution to lay on the table any resolution to enable the board to lay the pending question aside temporarily, and so forth, in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order. And then section C, all meetings and committees. Any questions on any of the proposals, wording and so forth on page 4 of 9? Any committee members? Seeing none, Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you. On the second paragraph, it's the full first paragraph where it discusses there in the middle, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line down, resolutions which are to be considered administrative or procedural. Is there a definition or even an intent to be given for those two terms?
So I know that I've asked you committee chairs to sign forms in the past where we'll have something that comes, we called it out of committee. Those are things that we think can't wait until another meeting. We just had a couple of those at the last board meet or the last organization meeting. We had those budget amendments. Those are things that health service needed to get their advertising done for COVID. So we did those in what we call out of committee process. And that's that chart. I'm sorry, it's a front page and it's got a bunch of different lines and each person has to initial it and say that they're not opposed to this coming through out of committee. So these are things that are procedural or administrative. So it's not going to be something like, you know, the matter of going back to allowing snowmobiles on the bike trail. It's not something like that. It's going to be like a budget amendment or a grant agreement or something that's kind of what we would consider to be a no-brainer. That wouldn't be a contentious item for the board.
Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you, Amanda. I just have one more question on letter C, number 1. I do have a question about whether or not, I really do. This is a question. Whether or not a motion to table is considered a question related to priority of business such that it would be decided without debate. I feel like we've gone both ways on this question in the last couple of years, and I just wanted to be clear. If we make a motion to table, does that mean there's no further debate and no debate on the motion to table or not?
So your question is, that is a motion to table, is that a question of order?
Right. It says all questions relating to the priority of business shall be decided without debate. I'm assuming that's where we come up with that a motion to table is called, the vote is called without debate. Although I feel like at the last board meeting, we said that there was, maybe it wasn't the last one, that there was debate on a motion to table. I just think this is an appropriate time to clarify it, maybe put that specifically in the rules or don't, or maybe just have that discussion now so that we all know motion to table is without debate or with debate.
All right, Supervisor Thomas first, and then
Yeah, I think on page 5 of 9, number 11 addresses that very thing. A motion to adjourn shall always be in order and shall be subject to debate.
That's a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry.
That's what you were talking about. Okay. I didn't hear lay on the table. I did hear adjourn.
Administrator Moore.
Yeah, the bullet point underneath that one, point 12, addresses the others. The other motions, it was unless for adjournment of the board for the previous question to place on the table indefinitely, to place on the table for a certain day, to hold it to amend it. There's an administrative change in the line below that reflects the chairman change above that says, it used to say they shall not be subject to debate, and we struck out not. Make them all subject to debate.
All right, so I assume that answers your question, Supervisor Seaver?
I'm Bramer. Thank you. Yes, it does.
Okay. Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you. I have questions under C for 2, 6, and 7. My first question under C2 is that the chair shall preserve order and shall decide all questions of order subject to the appeal of the board. Is it possible to add it in and in accordance with Robert's rules?
Well, I'm assuming that Robert's rules doesn't conflict, because if it does, then our rule prevails.
And I have clarification on that. Does it conflict?
Well, I can't give you an answer. I haven't memorized the Robert's Rules of Order. Yeah.
May I?
Yeah.
It's my understanding that there is an order of which motions are to be decided on to preserve order and shall decide all questions in order, but subject to the appeal by the board. All I'm asking for is it follow in accordance with Robert's rules. We've had extensive training on that this past year.
Well, if it doesn't, then there's a conflict, right?
Could we have that clarified before Friday?
What's the committee think?
Our rules, Robert's rules applies when our rules are silent.
Right.
If our rules are not silent, our rules take precedence.
So if it's not silent, it's already in there, but it speaks to that purposely. Committee, any desire to consider adding the words in accord with Robert's Rules of Order at this time? All right,
The language doesn't
All right.
use the
Not at the-
interpreter as to a conflict between Robert's rules and our rules. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with any language
all
that
right, let's move on.
amplifies or clarifies, provided that we're not saying that Robert's rules trumps our rules. That's why we have rules. Because if you're saying Robert's rules trumps our rules, then the chair can't vote.
That's not what I said.
And the reason we say in our rules that the chair can vote is because there are rules. And that's why that's there. So, again, I don't have any problem with any amplification, clarification of the language, provided in doing so, we don't confuse that point.
Supervisor Seeger?
Thank you. May I please address Supervisor Conover?
Sure.
Supervisor Conover, I'm aware of what you're saying and why that's important. All I'm asking for is a clarification by whether it be the parliamentarian or the county attorney before Friday. Just if we consider on Friday adding in accordance with the Robert's rules, if it does not act in conflict with our rules of the board, that's all. And if it doesn't, I would just ask that it be added. If it does, that's a different subject for debate on Friday.
Okay.
But I also have questions on 6 and 7, but would that be, could we have that looked into?
Well, I think staff has taken note of that, and if there's something in Robert's Rules of Order that makes our proposed rule out of order, then I suppose we should consider that, but I'm not seeing that.
That's, okay, that's not what I'm,
Well,
Getting
we're
at.
gonna move on. So would you like, and you
Yeah.
have a question on?
I
that?
do on 6, and it's quite timely because it's about the ability to discuss and debate. So again, as I'm talking about 2, I am trying to have a valid discussion regarding adding the words in accordance with the Robert's rules and asking just for that follow-up. But moving on to 6, which I hope then we'll hear about before Friday. Number 6, last year and in prior years, there have been, as under Supervisor Thomas as well, I was very critical of this aspect when he was chair. You have no member shall speak more than once until every member has an ability to speak, shall have spoken. There has been many discussions around, does that mean 2 times? Does it mean 3 times? Does it mean 3 minutes? Does it mean 5 minutes? And is there a second chance of debate? This is where I believe it was Supervisor Conover all year. We have had so many discussions about, can a chair of a committee versus a chair of the board debate a topic, and then if they do, only here it says if they are going to step down and excuse themselves, and then appoint a temporary chair. And I've heard that there's been some discussion about, can you appoint any temporary chair, or do you have to appoint, your finance chair, or in your committees, you have a first vice chair and a second vice chair. So my question is twofold in number 6. One, how many rounds of debate are we having, or what is the right of the committee members to be able to have that debate? This just says nobody can speak again until everybody else has spoken and go to round 2, but at what discretion is round 2 or 3? And I would propose at least adding a round 2 in our rules of the board. And the second being just an opinion from the county attorney as it relates to stepping down as a chair. I assume this still means just regular board meetings, not committee. Well, actually, this says if the chair of the board or chair of any committee wishes to enter into debate, which we see many, many times at our committee levels. And in some instances, the chair entered a debate at a full board meeting. But this is saying they can't do that at all unless they excuse themselves and a temporary chair is appointed. So I'm looking for, that topic was a very hot topic and some clarification on it.
Yes, and you're right, that deserves discussion.
Thank you.
Supervisor Conover?
Yeah, I mean, the point was made that Robert's rules said something that Robert's rules does not say. And this went through a whole string of emails and there were comments about workshops and all other kinds of things. Robert's rules clearly states that the chair of committees, small committees, can vote and can participate in the debate. That applies provided our rules don't say other than that. Provided our rules don't say other than that. So if our rules feel that the decorum of our meeting should be that the chair should not participate in debate, step down to participate in debate, then that's the rule. And if our rules say, if you wish to say, maintain some decorum at the meetings, that you would prefer also that the chair of committees also not participate in the debate of the committee, but step down to participate in debaters, you could say that as well. So there doesn't need to be any confusion on this point. It's simply a question of some people might believe that the chair of a committee should participate in debate. Some may feel that that they should not. And if you feel that they should not, since Robert Rules allows it, clearly allows it, then you need to say it here.
All right, should the chair be allowed to debate in your opinion?
Chair of the board?
Chair of the committee or chair of the board? Should they be allowed to participate?
As far as I'm concerned, the chair of the board absolutely not should step down to participate in debate.
Chair of committee?
The chair of committees? I believe that the chair of the committee should not participate in the debate. They're allowed to vote, then I should not, to maintain the decorum and the neutrality of the meeting. That said, if our rules are silent on that point, then Robert's rules would apply and the chair would carry all the privileges of any other member of the committee.
Well, it's not. As Supervisor Seaver pointed out, it says that if the chair wishes to join in the debate, then they have to go through this procedure.
Right. And that's there, make no mistake, to maintain certain decorum in the meeting. But, and not our meeting, just our meeting, but the committee
So
meeting.
you're saying keep it as is?
I would, but that's my own.
All right, well, let me
feeling.
go around, see Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairman. I concur with Supervisor Ron on that point, but it's been my experience that Chairwoman Seaver and Chairman Conover and Thomas in leading the meeting are clarifying and participating in the discussion, but not in the debate. And I think I want to make sure that we afford the chairperson the opportunity to keep the discussion moving. And oftentimes that means that they can't be silent. So I think there's a difference between silence and getting us back on track, helping with clarification if the attorney or Mr. Moore, aren't available to, or a parliamentarian, to help us out. So, I agree that they shouldn't participate in the debate, but they can participate in the discussion as it's necessary to keep the discussion moving.
So you're approving the wording as is?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
I approve the wording as it is too. I think we should keep it that way.
Supervisor Thomas?
Yeah, the wording's been like this for quite a while. I think it gets abused quite regularly.
Yeah, but you agree with keeping it as is?
Well, the committee chairs, I think, they're more involved in the issues, in the particular issues of that committee, I think. But I can live with it, but again, I think it gets abused a lot.
All right, well, Supervisor Conover?
Yeah, just one other point. There's nothing in our rules that says you can only speak twice. What it says is that you have to wait until everyone's had an opportunity to speak first. But there's nothing there that says that you only speak twice, and I think that that's important because we are a public entity and the opportunity of free and open debate on any issue, I think, is very important. And we should take care not to create any arbitrary limitations on that debate because sometimes the issue evolves during the debate. So, and there had been, the idea that, well, you've spoken twice and that's all you get is the opportunity to speak twice. I don't believe this rule says that at all. What it's saying is trying to maintain, once again, the decorum of the meeting by saying that you get to speak and then everyone that wants to speak for a first time gets to speak before you get to speak again. But it doesn't say, and once you speak the second time, Peter, that's it. I don't want to hear from you again or anyone else. What it's saying is that then you have another round.
Okay,
That's
and
the
I
point.
agree, it does that. So it seems like it's a consensus that the chairperson, whether it be of the board or of a committee, should not be active in debate other than making sure the administration of that particular meeting is moving forward. Now, the other question that Mr. Seaver brought forward is a clarification. The temporary chair is to be appointed by the chair. Does that have to be one of the committee members? I'm assuming yes, but I think that's what you wanted clarification on. Is that correct?
May I?
Yeah.
Partially, my question on that was, does it have to be the vice chair of the committee? Or can it be any committee member?
Well, it says appointed by the chair.
Right, but I believe, may I ask our county attorney about that?
Sure.
County attorney, is it any member of the committee or is it your vice chair that you have to call on?
This is a rules issue for the committee to work on the board. There is an inconsistency that Supervisor Sieber has noted because each committee has appointed first vice chair and a second vice chair. So I guess the question is whether or not the committee chair is excusing herself or himself to debate, and does it go to the first vice chair or second vice chair, or does the chair merely appoint who's going to be the chair for the meeting? Meaning these rules later on designate what the flow of command is in the absence of the chair. I think what I hear Supervisor Sieber asking is which provision applies. And that's up to the board, that's up to the committee to make a recommendation to the board on. And whatever is made, it's not really a legal issue, it's up to the committee and the board.
So in response, just to clarify now, my question is, I'm so glad that this section is now being talked about publicly because this is so critical that the chair and the committee chair will not enter into debate. And if they do, only after they excuse themselves, and they can pick any member. It doesn't sound like it has to be of the committee or a vice chair. It can be any member to temporary chair. And it also sounds like there is no limit then on discussion, which to Supervisor Connor's point is so critical because I don't believe that we should ever end. I think we all have a constitutional right to debate unless it's voted on by the full board to end debate, which of course is our right in Robert's rules. So just to clarify then, this has been a really big topic this last year, but it sounds like we tried our best to be following all those rules and to making sure that the chair isn't influencing the direction of the debate. And I'm happy to hear this committee support the language as it is in 6.
So right now, the chair, if the chair is withdrawing for the purpose of joining the debate, they can pick any one committee member to replace them. It doesn't have anything to do with the succession as outlined in section D, paragraph 3. Or we could add wording that who shall be listed will be in accord with the succession agreement as outlined in section 3, paragraph, or section D, paragraph 3. Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just got in from Colorado. Did the governor lift the mask mandate? I also just signed an oath to uphold the laws of New York State.
Yeah, well, you're talking about me. It's just that I didn't want to be muffled, and at the time I removed my mask, I had social distancing. But I'll put it on.
Thank you.
All right, so, yeah,
Supervisor Bruno had his hand up.
thank you. Supervisor Bruno?
Thank you, Chairman Sproul. I just wanted to state the obvious that in the event that the committee chair removes him or herself to enjoin debate and the vice chair, second vice chair assume that position, then they are eliminated from debate. And I don't know if that makes a difference to your discussion here, but I just want to remind people, I think that's correct. Thank you.
Supervisor Conover?
I mean, look, it's possible that everybody on the committee wants to participate in the debate. And you could say, well, what then? And I've never experienced that to this point in time, but is that hypothetically a possibility? I suppose that is a possibility, but normally there's somebody on the committee that is, a particular item is not a hot button issue. They're going to vote yes or no. They're going to cast their vote, but they're not necessarily going to participate in the debate. What we're talking about here is not voting. What we're talking about here is debating. So you may have a committee member that plans on voting yes or no, but not planning on participating in the debate. But you have a chair that wishes to make some points and wishes to make those points strenuously. Perhaps the chair is the author of the legislation and wants to be an advocate for it. That happens, right? That can happen.
Or if somebody is in the committee and is in opposition of what you wish, you will appoint them as the chair, and that will quiet them for sure, because they won't be allowed to speak. All right.
Well, I would assume that person would decline the nomination, of chairing the meeting. And I also assume that we're talking about chairing for that item of the agenda. And many times there are multiple items on the agenda. You're not stepping down for the whole meeting. You're stepping down for the item that you wish to debate. But again, it comes down to what is it that you want to say?
Supervisor Seaver?
I appreciate the discussion on 6. It sounds like your committee is fine with that language. And if you're done the debate on number 6, I'm happy to move to number 7, which was my last question on this page.
Okay, let's do so.
On number 7, I'd like to ask you to make a suggestion that any member upon being called to order shall take his or her seat and remain there until the point of order is raised. We've had a lot of discussion this past year about Robert's rules requiring us to stand for a point of order. I'd like to make it so that you don't have to stand for a point of order, but rather when the point of order is asked of a member, it takes precedence over everything else, but that the chair, here it says, shall not proceed except in order unless by permission once the point is sustained. I do think there's some confusion on points of order. It does take precedent. The chair needs to ask to state the point and then make a decision on the point, not to move on. The point needs to either be well taken or not well taken, with that explanation if it's not well taken, so that the committee or the board can have an opportunity to appeal the chair's ruling, which certainly has happened in the past. So I don't know if our rules then are in conflict with that practice. By the way I'm reading it here, it looks like it would be, and I would ask that this board please consider, 1, not making someone stand, but 2, making it be a point of order, that member calling it to be afforded that right to make their point why the rules are being broken, which is what a point of order is for. Not whether we like something or not, but whether or not the rules are broken, and having the chair make a decision on it. And then, of course, we have the right to appeal it. So it does follow Robert's rules, but this seems to be in conflict with that. And I can't imagine anyone on this board feeling differently since, we've had many points of order this year and everyone has been given an opportunity to state their point and it be ruled on. This past meeting, there was a concern about a point of order, and now it's resulted in a problem with the vice chair discussion on whether it takes place here today or at the full board, because there was miscommunication on not stating a point of order. So it would be nice to have that identified in 7. Please.
So you would like 7 clarified,
Yes, please.
and do you have any suggestions?
Yes, the ones I just made.
Okay, how would you change the wording in 7?
That any member being called upon to order shall may just, instead of shall, take his or her seat and remain there, just say shall take precedent, or I don't know, I'd ask for our county attorney to wordsmith that. So it's not about standing up. I recognize that there's health concerns and there's age and disability considerations here, and that has been brought up in the past. And I think it's an unfair discrimination to ask for standing. If perhaps someone broke their leg or whatever, has a injury that we don't necessarily see. Until the point of order raised is determined. It says if the point is sustained, what if the point is not sustained? There shall be some type of explanation on why it's not well taken. That's why we had a parliamentarian by resolution appointed by this board to give advice to the chair, but in nowhere in these new rules do you reference our parliamentarian. So I just want to make sure our points of order are actually ruled upon.
I think you make some good points there, Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Supervisor Stroud.
Can we, I think you're trying to get at 2 things. One is that someone raising a point of order does not have to physically rise, that you can do so from your seat. The other question that I'm interpreting you is that when is the point of order decided, whether it's a legitimate point of order? Does that go to the parliamentarian? If I understand you correctly, those are a couple of your points.
If I may.
Yes.
Your first is correct, yes. The second, though, is not. The parliamentarian under the law is to give advice only to the chair of that committee or the chair of the board, and then that chair makes their decision on whether that point is taken or not well taken at that time. If the point is taken, the chair should then address, like for instance, last week, at the last meeting, there was an issue with a point of order on conduct. Instead of ruling on the point of order, the chair simply said, thank you. I think it's important that the point of order is, your point is well taken or not well taken, and then a description is given if it's not well taken, so that an opportunity to appeal is done, not to move on. I believe Supervisor Conover thought I was stepping on his toes last week and that he had the floor, but the point of order still had not been decided on. When it was decided on, it was a conflict of dates, and because it was moved on so quickly, we now have a problem with our vice chair discussion.
The chair would determine the validity of the point of order.
That's how it is under Robert's rules. Yes, sir.
Supervisor Conover?
Yeah, the only time I've, in my 12 years, going on 1 month, 1 month, I have ever heard a supervisor told to rise to make a point of order was last year. And our practice has always been that it can be done from your seat. I have absolutely no problem amending the language to clarify that it can be done from your seat. And I'm not sure anybody here in the room would object to that. So now Robert's rules does talk about rising, and so that's what was applied this last year during 1 or 2 meetings. So, but we need some language in that regard. Put it in. I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Any suggestions for language at this time? County Attorney Elman or others?
Honestly, I'd rather hear from the committee.
Yes, Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. I think that, oh, I had something in my head, sorry. But something just striking that language about taking his seat seems to imply that under Robert's rules, they have already stood up. I would say just something like, to strike that language and say, any member upon being called to order shall remain silent until the point is determined, until the point raised is determined by the chair.
Shall remain in their seat and remain silent.
Yeah. But no, I think you need to say something about the standing, because otherwise Robert's rules take effect, right?
Right, well, I said, well, that's why I said remain in your seat, so you're. not-
Okay, yeah, right.
Okay. County administrator.
Yeah.
More, and then.
Just a point, my reading of shall take his or her seat, it applies not to the person who's calling the point, but the person about whom the point was called. If I'm a member of the board and I'm out of line and one of my colleagues raises a point of order, it means that I have to take my seat. In other words, I have to stop what I'm saying until the point of order is ruled on.
So,
I don't think our rules are necessarily speaking to the person raising the point standing. It's the person who's speaking about whom the point is raised.
all right, Supervisor Seaver.
When we had our parliamentarian give our training last year, he was a NACO parliamentarian and is known to be one of the experts in the country. What he talked about was state of when we're doing a point of order, that something so egregious is happening, that the rules are being broken, that the member stands to call attention to themselves to say, please stop. And by doing that, in accordance with the decorum of a meeting, it is point of order. And that all members then shall, maybe at that point in time, we just say all members shall stay seated and silent until the point of order is determined. That way, it's not just the member that called the point of order. The chair addresses the member that called the point of order and says, state your point. Everyone stays silent until that point is then determined by the chair. And then that way, it doesn't feel like any of us are stepping on each other's toes with saying, well, I don't think that's a point of order. That's for the parliamentarian to provide guidance to the chair, then the chair to determine whether or not they're going to take the advice of the parliamentarian.
All right, so one does not have to rise from their seat to make a point of order.
And that all members stay silent until the point of order is determined. Except the member that calls the point of order needs to say what rules were broken. That's the whole point of the point of order. What rules were broke out of this document? Where did we break the rules?
Okay, so how about adding the language to this in the beginning? One does not have to rise from their seat to make a point of order, and all shall remain in their seats until the point of order has been determined by the chair, right? So the validity of that.
In their seats in silence.
Supervisor Conover?
Yeah, I mean, the point being that you're asking the chair to make no point of order. It's either well taken and they say, yes, Supervisor so-and-so, you should not be saying disparaging things about Supervisor Conover or whoever. And then if the person doesn't like the ruling of the chair, then they can challenge the ruling of the chair, in which case then it's put to the body politic for a vote. They either uphold or not uphold the ruling of the chair. If they uphold the ruling of the chair, continue. If they don't uphold the ruling of the chair, then the opposite is true. That's how it's supposed to take place.
Well, what's the next step? If the person who made the original point of order, the chair decides there is no point of order that's valid, what is the appeal process? Then you have to appeal to the Board of Supervisors for a vote on that matter?
Mhm.
Okay.
You would say, Madam Chairwoman, Chairman, I do not concur with your ruling, and I would ask that the board act on that, vote on that. In which case, the board would say, yes, we agree, or no, we don't agree. It's not a monarchy. It's a democratic process.
All right,
Yeah.
so, all right, in summary, I think I'm hearing that we're comfortable with adding language that one does not have to rise from their chair to make a point of order. All will remain seated until the point of order validity is determined. So, yeah, Supervisor Thomas?
Maybe if we started off with a point of order takes precedence, and then change any to all members upon being called to order shall take his or her seat and remain there until the point raised is determined. I think that would clarify.
Yeah. Okay, so, I think we know what we want. If the county attorney and the county administrator wishes to wordsmith this before Friday, we would appreciate that. I think we know where we want to go. Yeah.
Would this be sufficient on the first point? Upon any member raising a point of order, all members shall remain seated and silent until the chair determines the point raised. Does that sentence, I'm taking it one sentence at a time, is that sentence sufficient so far?
Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you. Would it be possible just, and tell me if you don't need to put this in here, in accordance with Robert's rules? Is that assumed that the rest of it would be in accordance? So that process of the appeal and state your point and not well taken or taken, all of that is in accordance with Robert's rules. Does that language need to be there, or is it assumed that it will be in accordance with Robert's rules? Because I do like Supervisor Thomas's suggestion.
The second sentence would be, the chair shall sustain or deny the point raised, period. And then the third sentence I haven't written down, but it would mirror what it is, which is either, as I understand it, Supervisor Conover, the member raising the point of order or the speaker may object to the determination and request a vote on the point of order by the entire board. I don't know if that's too wordy or not, or if I missed something there.
As long as it says that, I don't care about words.
Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you. It's any member that could appeal. And that's why I suggested in accordance with Robert's rules.
But again, that's for the committee to decide, not me.
Yeah.
Whether it's the objecting, whether it's the party that raises the point of order or the speaker, or if it's any member of the committee or board that can ask for or appeal the decision.
May I reply to the
Supervisor
county
Seaver,
attorney?
Can I ask a question? Am I allowed to as chair?
If you don't want to debate.
No, but if you put down the words in accord with Robert's Rules of Order, and it's in conflict with Robert's Rules of Order,
Right.
then what happens? See, it kind of muddies the water when you put that in, I think, but it's an administrative question.
May I reply to that?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. In this case, it doesn't, it's not in conflict with Robert's rules. I'm just trying to save time in the wordsmithing of it. If you just, the issue that's in conflict is whether you sit or you rise. The rest of it, if you just say in accordance with Robert's rules, I just didn't know if that was necessary.
I can't validate if it is in accordance with Robert's Rules.
Okay. It's my understanding, though, that any member can appeal that ruling. It doesn't have to be the member that calls the
But
point.
Supervisor Thomas, on hearing the suggested wording from county attorney, were you comfortable with that?
Yeah,
You
I
made
think
a
that gets,
suggestion, but
that gets to the point.
is the committee comfortable with what the county attorney suggested? All right, thank you, Supervisor Seaver. I think we've gone some distance clarifying that. Thank you. Anything else on page 4 of 9? Okay, seeing nothing here, or I'm not, somebody has to alert me if somebody in Zoom who is a county supervisor has a question. Okay, on page 5 of 9, we have changed 11 to make it clear. A motion to adjourn always shall be in order and shall be subject to debate. And 12 is eliminating the last sentence. 13 deals with minutes of the board and its distribution. D talks about standing committees, making them at least 5. Special committees, at least 3. Some suggestions on standing committee names and eliminating executive committee, and that goes over to the next page. But any thoughts on page 9, 5 of 9? Committee? Yes.
John, when it says county facilities that have, what is it, 5 to go up to 7, I'm a little confused because it looks like 57. Are they saying they're 5 and it should
No,
go up
that's
to?
a 5 that's scratched, and they're suggesting there'd be 7 members.
I kind of agree with that. I look at my own committee, health services with 5. I really think 7 would be a more workable number than the 5.
Okay. Any other committee member thoughts on page 5 of 9? Anybody else? Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you. I have a couple concerns on page 5 of 9. One being for special committees. I see that you've now added, the chairman has added special committees consisting of at least 3, but all standing are only 5. The only committee that has 3 members happens to be NACO. And I would ask that that please be considered to be 5 members and a NACO/NISAC committee. I think it would encourage members to put in requests to NACO and NISAC to sit on their standing committees. This past year, we've seen great benefits from both our involvement with NACO and NISAC. And one of them resulting just in thousands of dollars saved in our GIS system. But also our advocacy with COVID and COVID protocols with NISAC. So it's the only one that's 3. So if it could please be that special and standing committees are at least 5.
Okay, so are we moving over to page 6?
No, I'm still on 5. That's under the 5 D1. And then my other question was just over the last decade, every 2 or 3 years, we go back and forth between 5 and 7 members. Every chair, even when Chairman Garrity was chair over those period of 4 years, I believe, there was changes from 5 to 7, 5 to 7. This goes back and forth all the time. So last year we heard over and over and over, particularly Supervisor Wild and Supervisor Hogan had talked about less committees, less people, but more effectiveness so that you had members on your committee that were all really active. And I know Supervisor Driscoll raised concerns about that. So I would prefer to continue to I know this goes back and forth, so I guess it's the opinion of the full board on Friday on how everyone weighs in on those numbers. Because I think some feel strongly for more and some feel strongly for less. But as it relates at least to the special committees, I feel that's a little, if everyone else is going to have 5, couldn't we expand NACO to be NACO/NISAC and have 5 members? And change the D1 to 5 for the special committees?
All right, well, let's stay on page 5 of
Yeah.
9. Is there any further discussion among committee members to change what's being proposed as the number of committee people per committee? Supervisor Conover?
I think having 7 affords greater opportunity for supervisors to participate at the committee level. And assuming something passes at the committee level, I think it may create more consensus at the board level. That's my thinking on that. I think 5 is too few. And then what ends up happening when you have 5, if you schedule, I believe we did have an issue, but if you schedule a committee meeting on the heels of a holiday, major holiday, then yeah, it can be difficult getting a quorum, although the chair can sit in, it's assuming the chair is available as well. So, but I think 7 affords greater opportunity for supervisors to participate on as many committees as possible.
Supervisor Driscoll?
Thank you, Chairman, and I would agree with Supervisor Frazier. The other thing, too, is that I think that, I know it's not intentional, but you take a look at a committee with 7 people and you take a look at a committee with 5 people, and they're equally important. They're equally, hard work goes into all of the committees. And I wouldn't want to give anyone the impression that one committee is more important or the goals are any more difficult than any other committee. So I would agree that 7 would be a good number and consistent, at least for the standing committees, 3 or 5, and I think Supervisor made a good point about the NACO and the state and those types of organizations. And I would question whether or not they need to also be just members of the Board of Supervisors. If some of our department heads or administration might also be valuable members of those particular committees.
Thank you. All right, so I think the consensus is, and we will get the NACO Supervisor Seaver, but the consensus is they are more comfortable with 7 than 5. On page 5 of 9. So on page 5 of 9, is there any other concerns about something, Supervisor Seaver? Any committee members further? Nothing, Supervisor Seaver?
Oh, I think you said Supervisor Siebert or Supervisor Bramer again, but if she doesn't mind allowing me to answer for do you mind?
Go right ahead.
Do you mind?
I said
Call it.
Supervisor Seaver.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, so my question once again, though, was very specific to page 5 of 9, D, subsection 1, where it says special committees consisting of at least 3 members. My example was only NACO that it was 3. Could that please be changed to 5?
Committee members changing special committee to be at least 5. Supervisor Driscoll. Yes, he's in favor of 5. Supervisor Kyle,
Sure, why not?
Conover, Frazier.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yes, Amanda?
On the special committees, the reason we left that at 3 was because Park O&M is 4 with 1 alternate. We can't change the number on that committee. That was set by resolution to give the county representation and the village representation. So that number stays where it is. So in consult with the county attorney, that's what we decided to do, was leave it at minimum of 3. So that way it covered us on Park O&M. So if you change that to 5, it wouldn't work. So we could maybe leave it to 3 and then just change the number of people on the NACO NISAC committee. If that's what you're going to change, just change that from 3 to 5.
Couldn't we just do 4 so it's in accordance?
I'm hearing the committee's in favor of raising the number. If 4 meets the standard, then we can do that. Okay, let's raise that to 4, at least 4 members for special committee. Is that it for page 5 of 9? Yes, Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you, Supervisor Stroud. I did want to make the point that I had asked for the executive committee to be stricken. I think that's appropriate. I'm glad to see it in the proposal. What a corollary request there was for the committee to consider adding additional board meetings so that we could streamline some of the things that are happening at our main full board meetings on Fridays.
Whereabouts do you see that on page 5?
I'm bringing it up because on page 5 is where where the executive committee was removed.
Yeah, I see that, and you're fine with that.
Yep.
Okay. So let's go on to page 6 of 9. And the one topic that was brought up is NACO. And I think Amanda said NACO is established by another rule or legislative. Yeah,
No, I'm sorry, that was Park O&M. Park O&M. NACO NISAC is different. But I did just want to point out one other thing. If you change this to a minimum of 4, so if you have 4 people on a committee, if you have 2 people who vote for, I mean, it's hard to get a majority if you have an even number. That's why we keep everything
I
out.
thought we were allowed to go up to 4, but no more than 4.
Right, but if you only have 4 people on a committee and you have 2 people that voted for it and 2 people that vote against it, it's automatically, it fails. That's why we keep things, we always have an odd number.
Well, that is
For
a good
majority.
point. That is a good point. Supervisor Seaver?
May I ask our clerk a question?
Yeah, certainly.
Ms. Allen, I thought you just said Parks O&M was 4 people, so the same issue would apply there.
Because we have 4 people plus an
Okay.
alternate.
Okay,
And then
I'm with you.
we have other people that are from the village.
Okay.
4 is the county's representation.
So can we do 4 people plus an alternate then on, to,
4 people plus, but that's what I'm saying. If you just leave it at least 3, that doesn't stop you from having 19 people on that committee. Well, it would because you'd have a quorum of the board, but we're just saying you have to have a minimum of 3. That doesn't stop everybody from changing the NISAC NACO to 5.
All right, committee. 3, 4.
I sure am.
We can go to 4, but Amanda, Miss Allen makes a good point.
you're saying you can, sorry.
Supervisor Frazier, your thoughts? Keep it 3, move it to 4 and have alternates? No opinion?
I would have probably kept it at 3 in the beginning. so.
All right, fair enough. Supervisor Driscoll? Keep it 3.
Go to someone else, please. That's fine.
Supervisor Conover, Supervisor Thomas, what are your thoughts? 3, keep it 3?
Yeah, I think with the clerk's explanation, I think
Yeah.
3 is where it should be.
Okay, Supervisor Conover? 3, 3, 3. Supervisor Seaver?
Thanks. I'm chuckling Supervisor Stroud because while I appreciate the chair's appointment of 2 of 14 standing committees, special committees really don't meet. NACO has never meant. It is something that we've prioritized as a commitment, not only to NACO. What I've suggested is that the name change go from NACO to NACO/NISAC. And it sounds like it could have 5 members on it, but it is the only committee of a special committee, not a standing committee, that I've been assigned to chair. So it's ironic that 2 out of 14 standing committees the prior chair is on, but I only have 1 special committee, which has the least members of the entire board. It just, I think it's poor optics, and I would very much appreciate it to be 5 members for my 1 special
All right.
committee that never meets.
So on page 5, after listening to Miss Allen's knowledge on the material, we have decided to keep the 3 as a committee. Okay, now let's go over page 6 of 9. And so far, the question has been brought up about NACO. Are there legislative rules that apply here, or can we make that a higher number?
No, you can make it a higher number.
Okay, so what is the thought on the committee?
I'm back to 5 just for NACO.
Driscoll 5, Frazier,
I'll go with 5.
Conover, Thomas.
5 is
Fine with
good.
5, okay.
Could it be NACO/NISAC?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Do we send 5 to Washington?
Yeah, I think
No,
we can all
no, that's
participate in
not.
that.
No, we're not.
No, that's not what it's saying.
No, it's not what it's saying. And that's a separate topic. All right, so we'll increase that to 5. Other things, yes, Supervisor McGowan.
Along with that too, can we add on NISAC, the National Association of Counties and NISAC?
Okay.
NACO and NISAC.
So as a special committee, is that what you're saying?
Right.
So we
That
should
was
have
fine.
special committees for that organization?
you were asking?
It was, but I don't know how, sorry. May I clarify what my question was?
Yeah,
Could you please just change the name to NACO/NISAC? And if you make it to 5, I think it would encourage more members to seek out different standing committee appointments and different involvement and encourage to Supervisor Frazier points or maybe a Supervisor Driscoll. Ms. Allen is on that committee, and according to our standing rules now, the chair can pick the vice chair. I've asked, given Supervisor Leggett's new responsibilities with finance, that perhaps Ms. Allen could be the vice chair. So there are department heads that are on that. So by increasing it to 5, making it NACO/NISAC, I think you are encouraging more involvement for that type of advocacy at a state and a federal level on behalf of Warren County.
so you were saying NACO should be a higher number, which we did. In addition to that, NISAC should be a committee, special committee. We should get rid of NACO.
No, sir.
Joint.
Just a
NACO is
joint,
fine with 3.
sir. No, just NACO/NISAC, 1 committee.
Oh, 1 committee.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
I support Supervisor Seaver's recommendation. It's a good use of similar skills and workload. I mean, it's advocacy,
all right.
the L word and all those types of things.
Supervisor Conover, shall we go to NACO/NICEC and 5 members for that combined committee?
Sure.
Supervisor Thomas?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, but I do have a question. Now, does that limit the other supervisors from participating in NICEC if they're not on the NICEC committee? I mean, as far as a committee, you know, and it's my understanding that anyone can join a NICEC committee and participate. So that doesn't change that? Okay, just want to be clear.
We all have the right to participate in our committees. It doesn't even meet, for God's sake, but maybe it will this year. But thank you for the
All right.
chair.
Well, unless we learn otherwise, it seems that the committee is comfortable with Supervisor Seaver's suggestion that we make a NACO/NICEC committee with 5 members. And, you know, are those members supposedly just from the board, or can they be from other places? Can we save that discussion for another day? Or does that have to be done now?
It's already where other people can be on it. Amanda's on it.
Okay, fine. All right, then I guess that was a question brought up, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else on page 6 of 9? Yes, Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you. I do request that the board consider putting back on the special committees that we have for this year, which are the septic committee that I chair and the ARPA committee that Supervisor Hogan chairs.
You're asking for them to be put on a special committee?
I believe it was simply an oversight, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it's not supposed to be listed.
No, they should be listed. That was an over.
on the bottom.
Oh, yeah, we're on the bottom. Bottom of the barrel.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
not in the, not in the rules, but they're on the committee sheet that came out. Sorry.
Yeah. All right, so should we add those 2 committees to the list of committees?
Yeah.
The septic committee, and what was the other one, Supervisor Bramer?
ARPA, and they're meeting right now.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't know.
So can we add ARPA and the septic committee to the list of, those would be special committees? Okay,
Oh,
we can do that. Supervisor Seaver?
just on that point, also intercounty, isn't that a committee where we get appointed to and usually have reports at the board?
Amanda's saying no.
That's not a standing committee. That's an
Special committee?
That's an outside committee that we belong
Okay.
to. That's not a Warren
So it
County.
doesn't have to be listed on that. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on page 6 of 9? Yes, Supervisor Seaver, I don't see any other committee members interested as much, so go ahead.
Well, I do have great interest in this. I spent all year researching these rules and every meeting we've talked about it. So I was disappointed to just see an hour, and I'm always happy to have more discussion on this at the full board, because I don't want to cut into Supervisor Hogan's ARPA committee time. But Supervisor Diamond at the full board meeting asked to see if legislative and rules could become its own separate committee from government operations. I see that there was consideration for his request on the agenda that there be just a name change, but that's not, after watching the YouTube video, what was suggested. And he also asked that all of your comments, Supervisor Stroud, in your thoughtful email that you provided to the board also be reviewed, which a lot of those I don't see incorporated in this. But first and foremost, legislative and rules was the committee that you chaired previously. While it did not meet very often, the request was from Supervisor Diamond to see if we could separate out legislative and rules from governmental operations. And I don't see that reflected here.
Well, I don't know if it's desired either. Committee members, anybody want to separate the two committees, government operations and legislative and rule? Supervisor Conover?
Yeah, no, I think just making it clear within the title like you have, that laws and rules, that responsibility falls to government operations. I'm good with that. Now, if government ops becomes so busy that it can't handle it, then at that time we could consider separating them. That would be my pass on it. But I too believe that the Laws and Rules Committee is a very important committee, and I was happy to see it identified in the title as, in fact, I think it leads the title, doesn't it? Isn't the new title? Yeah, Legislative and Rules. Now leads the title, which I was very happy to see that. But I think if we find going forward, these are our rules going forward, that this needs to be its own committee because it's plenty busy on its own, then we can make that decision at that time.
All right, so you're saying that now? Supervisor Thomas?
Yeah, I'm good with the change as it is.
Okay, that's it. All right, Supervisor, anybody on the committee have anything on page 6? All right, Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear that. Last year was so much controversy over removing legislative and rules as not its separate committee. So it's great to see that embraced here today as being part of government operations, despite Supervisor Diamond's request to have that back out. But I'm glad to see those opinions have changed. But I do just caution that now moving forward after this is adopted, if it is only a simple majority on Friday, to change that, it will then be a 2/3 majority, which is why I brought it up at this point in time. But all this being said, there was a standing committee list that was issued for 2022, which made it appear as though we had rules for 2022. My question right now, I'd like to direct to the county attorney, if you don't mind. I'd like our county attorney to please provide me with any advice, or if you can have advice maybe by Friday regarding this. I don't understand how these can be separated and how they can be changed from a list that was issued for a standing rules 2022. Now, at this point, I guess I'm a little unclear how we have a standing rules list of 2022, although there was discussion on whether or not the rules carried over, or if they didn't carry over, much like a contract and binding another board. But if they did carry over and we have a list, it didn't say pending, it didn't say draft, it didn't say anything, it just said standing committees 2022. How then are we able to go through this process and amend them without a 2/3 vote? Instead, we're adopting something that's already been issued with a simple majority vote. So I'm a little confused on all that, and I was hoping our county attorney could provide me some guidance.
And that strikes me as a rather complex question that I'll need to tweeze apart and respond to potentially at the board meeting. If you could rephrase that one more time, just so I'm clear specifically what your question is for purposes of an opinion.
May I, Supervisor Shaw? Thank you. County attorney, what I'm asking, and if possible, just to get an email the night before so that we were on the same page for the Friday board meeting. But again, a standing committee list was issued for 2022, which makes me think that if we're amending any of this, it would have to be amended by a 2/3 vote, not a simple majority vote, if in fact that's what we're going on. It was interesting last year, I was required to have a 2/3. Every other year, every chair is required to have a 2/3, but with a new board, you're required to have a simple majority. Should this board on Friday decide to keep it at a simple majority and not a 2/3 when the full board is here on a weighted vote, how does this impact the standing committee list of 2022 that's already been issued? Does that need a 2/3 then to be amended because it wasn't issued as a draft or a pending or anything like that? And what was the decision based on whether those rules carry over? I think those were the complexities around what's taking place when something is issued that had already been tabled.
What I can clarify right now, because it's addressed in these rules at the end, is that these rules would be subject to board approval, they would sunset at the organizational meeting in 2023 upon the 2023 board enacting their own rules.
At the end of 2023.
No,
I'm sorry.
every year by statute, the Board of Supervisors is required to hold an organizational meeting not later than January 8th. At that organizational meeting, the board selects a chair and appoints a chair. They may select a vice chair. And part of that is constituting a new board. And as part of that organizational meeting, that board gets to determine the rules under which it will work for that year. So there may be, the deeper question is the past practice that's been used in Warren County of enacting rules of the board at the beginning of the 2-year term for some of the supervisors by simple majority, and then the following year of that 2-year term, making modifications to those rules and requiring a 2/3 majority is, I think, what I hear is the past practice in Warren County. And the county attorney's position is that the organizational meeting that occurs each year constitutes a new board. And the rules of the board are enacted each year for that board's operation. And these rules set forth that the rules are passed by a simple majority, and further modifications, amendments, or changes to the rules during the course of that year has to be by a 2/3 majority. All of these are rules that are enacted by the board for that board's year. So these rules, as they're written, are designed to sunset and not bind the next board in 2023 upon the 2023 board enacting rules for the governance of their board, but in no circumstance later than January 31st of that year. Meaning, like this committee and the board on Friday is continuing their organizational process of enacting rules that'll govern their board for the 2022 year. Maybe that helps clarify the intent behind these rules, which is that they're for the 2022 board and how that board will conduct their business. And the 2023 board and all future boards will also determine their rules for the conduct of their business. And those rules will be enacted by a simple majority weighted vote.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Bramer and then Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you very much. What I didn't hear our county attorney directly hit on is whether or not our standing rules carry over. And what I'm going to, I guess it's my position that in order for this committee to even be meeting and to have a list of 2020 committees, our standing rules from last year have to carry over. So our standing rules, I mean, that all gets back to how are we going to take a vote on Friday about these rules? I think it all gets back to, we still have rules in place from 2021. And those rules say in order to amend the rules, you have to have a 2/3 majority vote. If the standing rules don't carry over, then we don't have an active committee list because we haven't even set standing committees yet. So this committee perhaps shouldn't even be meeting. I mean, otherwise, what are we doing here if we don't have a government ops standing committee? I would say we do have a standing committee list and it needs to be modified to go along with whatever the chair wants to do for this year, 2022.
Well, last year's rules say that special committees can be created at regular meeting of the board. They shall, unless otherwise ordered, be directed by a majority vote of the board. That was the old rules. And we're proposing is they'll be the same rules. Nothing's changed. Supervisor Conover?
Yeah, I came here today. I'm willing to consider any reasonable proposals to improve our rules. I don't recall a great debate at the time last year. In fact, up until this last year, I don't recall any real debate over, serious debate over our rules. It's how we conduct
No.
our business. And I would hope that everyone would continue to operate within that spirit. But, people will do what they have to do.
County attorney. has
People will do what they
spoken on
have
this.
to do. And so I say, let's let the process work. Let's move on with it. And let's get on with people's business. That's my feeling on the matter. And to the degree people want to debate that, I'm more than willing and more than capable of debating that, and I will. And I think that if you have suggestions for the rules that you think improve on our operations going forward, now, a week from now, a month from now, 2 months from now, advance them. My experience has been the board, these are reasonable people. If they feel there's a need to amend our rules, a need to amend our operations, the board, in my 12 years, has been more than willing to consider those things and do those things. And if we have a problem, we'll remedy the problem. That's my speech for the day. And we can spend a lot more time here.
Okay.
I'm
All
paid
right.
to serve.
Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you. That's exactly my point. I'm so glad we agree, Supervisor Conover. This is serious debate on a serious topic, which are the rules of our board. And historically, those rules of the board are just automatically passed at the organizational meeting. Last year, we passed our standing rules by a huge majority. And yet 2 weeks later, people said they didn't know what they passed. So we've spent all year talking about standing rules to have this very discussion and this very serious debate. And I think it's so important that we have it, which is why we're bringing up these concerns about what carries over. So that additional section C or at the end is really, really important that I don't think many of us recognized about the difference of the term versus the year. But again, you don't know what you don't know if the information isn't provided. So when I look at page 6 of 9, my other questions that are in regard to this is the splitting up of many of these committees. Again, I guess we'll debate the 2022 issue on Friday, but laying that to the side for the moment and hoping for more clarification. I personally was told last year by department heads, it's very hard for different department heads to have different committee supervisors, chairs of their committee. So here you're separating out tourism and OCTAX again. This goes back and forth over and over, year after year. Different chairs make different decisions with it. And of course, that's their right. I just wanted to say that department heads have shared, just like facilities and DPW or public works, that there's different chairs for that. Sometimes that makes it very difficult for department heads to have so many different chairs. So we're splitting up many of these, and particularly for higher education, I would ask that this committee to please consider, our budget officer is very busy this year. He's chair of personnel. He's the budget officer. I think he's on 5 to 7 committees total, which is each member has an average of 5. I know I only have 2. Supervisor McGowan has 2. Supervisors Bramer and Hogan have 3, but perhaps we could divide out higher education. If this board is now inclined to say they want more committees and more members, that's a really busy, that personnel is such a busy committee with budget. Higher education is something that, typically we try to send letters to all the graduates. We try to meet more frequently. It's so important. Isn't there a way to then divide that back out into another committee if this is going to be the trend for this year?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as a committee member,
Yeah.
my experience has been that
Sorry.
what really matters is how you operate. We can be here till the cows come home. Our chairman has advanced an organizational structure I respect that. I'm going to support that. And I would hope that the vast majority of the board, people of good mind and good spirit, would do the same. If somewhere along the way, something is here that shouldn't be here, or is so egregious that it needs to change, I am confident that our leadership will address that in due order. And again, we can stay here till 9 o'clock. I'm here till 9 o'clock if you want to debate all of these points. But my feeling is that I think the committee needs to press forward. I think we need to press forward. We need to adopt reasonable rules, and let's move on with the business. And anyone that's got heartache over a particular item, by all means, present that at the appropriate time. Be an advocate for it. I can't say it any other way. But again, more than even organization, it's how one operates. And I've been involved in the most elaborate organizational structures that ran well because the people that were involved operated well. And I've been in the most efficient type operations that didn't operate as well because people didn't operate as well. So what I would say here is, I get it. You have an opinion, you want this, you want that. I get that. Advance them to the chairman, advance them to the process, advance them to the committee. We'll deliberate on them. Our committee will take a vote and we'll move it on to the board. And if what's happening is so egregious to you, then I'm confident you'll vote no at the board. That's your right. That's how it works. That's how the process is supposed to work. And
Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you. You know, I was going to wait on this because I've been thinking back and forth, but going back to, page 2 of 9 with the supermajority. And then after our attorney, Mr. Ullman, explained in more depth, I'm starting to put 2 and 2 together here, and I can see why the supermajority, there's a possibility why this is turning out going to just a majority vote over a supermajority vote. And I have a problem pulling this out going back because there always seem to be 2 different layers of voting in the importance of issues. And I just wanted to be able to state that. And unfortunately, I had another thought in my mind, but I had my hand up first, seemed to be last to be called here.
Sorry.
That's all right. I feel, and like I said, I wanted to come back to it, but I feel by taking out the supermajority and the majority vote is a mistake on how we're going to handle things. So I just wanted to be able to state that, and I really forgot what I was trying to really achieve, but our attorney brought it up in explaining what we were talking about in the special committees.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts on page 6 and 9?
Well,
Yeah.
if I may keep going here. I also have a problem with the scratching of each chair shall appoint both the vice chair and the second chair. I mean, the second member and appointed shall serve as vice chair and the third member should be appointed. This to me sounds more like socialism. And the reason I say that, and I'll say it again, is, I have a list here. This was my last year committees, okay? And I chaired one, okay? Everybody see that? Frank? Have it?
Yeah, make me a copy.
Okay? So you'll see it again Friday. Here's this year, okay? Everybody see it? Okay, big difference. Big difference, all right? And I've been counting up the committees that I was attended last year. and I have a pretty good attendance record. There was a couple times I haven't finished, and I'll finish it out by Friday's meeting. But what I'm seeing here is the control being taken away from the people and going back to a good old boy system. And I'm quite offended with that. So I just wanted to put that out there is I have a problem going down, taking away the supermajority and the option of the chairs to pick their own vice chairs and their third chair.
Okay, from committee members, any thoughts? Yeah,
I
Supervisor.
have no problem with the committee chairs picking their first and second vice chairs. And we could have in our rules, we could say that if the chair chooses to do that election, that it's allowed. And if they choose to have the chair do it, that's okay too. This is not the end of the world. And I'm sure somebody that's a vice chair or a second chair or the other way around, what I'm saying is, I'm good either way. So if we want to put in the rules that each chair shall select a first may, you can use the word permissive, may should they elect to pick a second and third chair, a first and second chair, so be it. And if they don't, then the chair, it falls to the chair to make that selection. And I don't have any problem with that.
Okay, let's see what the consensus.
And just one
is.
other point.
So you're saying
When we
you can-
expand the committees to 7, we might find the supervisors find themselves on more committees. That's the whole point of 7. First, we hear it's counterproductive, but then we hear, well, I got committees that I want to be on that apparently I'm not on. But now all of a sudden you're going to have 2 times the number of committees we have. We're going to have on 10 committees or 11 committees, that's 22 more appointments. Is my math correct? That's 22 more supervisors that are going to find themselves in on committees. So, you know, again, I hear the point, and that would be my response to the point. That
All right,
I'm good either way, and I'm also feel that when we expand back to 7, we're going to have more opportunity for committee supervisors to serve on multiple committees. And just one other point for whatever it is, because whether you are on a committee or not on a committee, I've never known that process to exclude or to diminish any supervisor's right to attend the meeting and participate at the meeting. In fact, this is a great example of it right here. We have supervisors that aren't on government participating at a level at least equal to the members that are on government ops or beyond it. And we have always operated in that fashion. And the suggestion that something other than that is the case is just wrong. It's just wrong. And, you know, bad things happen, folks, when good people stay silent. Bad things happen when good people stay silent, and I am not going to stay silent. I'm not. So let's have the discourse. If that's what you want, let's go.
Okay, so you're good with either?
Either. If that's the proposal that's being made.
Well,
I'm
the
good with that.
proposal here
I like
is to
it.
change it and allow the committee chair to determine the succession. What's being proposed in the current rules before us is that the county chair, as opposed to the committee chair, the county chair will determine succession. Committee members, Driscoll, do you have any thoughts on that matter?
I, just personally, I know that the committee that I chaired last year, and I've been asked to chair that same committee this year, each of my members worked hard. We accomplished a lot. I've had Supervisor Frazier as my first vice, and Supervisor McGowan as my second. I think there was only one meeting that I had to excuse myself halfway through because I think we were running considerably late that particular day. But I can only speak for my committee. If you're on human services, I'm going to ask for as much help and ideas and background and skills from each of my members as I can. We're going to throw essentially titles right out everyone is going to be an equal, but I would support either, whatever the majority
Either
thinks
way.
I'm for.
Supervisor Thomas?
I can go either way on this. It doesn't really matter to me.
So Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you. I like
I did.
Supervisor McGowan's suggestion of allowing the chair the option to select their vice chair, the succession there. I think that's a good idea. And provide some flexibility there. If no selection is made, then the chair of the board could still make that succession planning. But it does give the chair, who is the chair of the board's pick, the option to pick who they would like as their main go-to people. I know that Vice Chair Garrity last year on Personnel Committee was someone who I went to when I had questions, and it was nice to be able to turn to that particular person as your vice chair. I have a couple of other points. One is I would like to say is I try very hard to come to committee meetings, even when I'm not on the committee, prepared for the things that will be before that committee so that I am ready to debate. And I am here today, ready to debate. And I think we've had a very good discussion. It's been a little bit painful as to how slow we're going, but that's how it goes sometimes. I am here to debate this item, and I'm happy to do it in a committee meeting so that we are not sitting at a full board meeting doing this with the public watching, less people are watching our committee meeting. So I wanted to make that point, and I wanted to make the point that I do think it was a bit disrespectful to our ARPA committee that we only scheduled 1 hour for this. I don't know how that happened, but they've basically missed their entire committee. I'm on that committee. I'm happy to be there. I think it's a really important thing, and we put people from the public on it. I just wanted to put that out there. And lastly, I am only on 2 committees. I am the chair of the other special committee for septic. I'm happy to do that. It's really interesting to me. And so I'm happy to do that. I'm not complaining that I'm only on 2 standing committees as a member. I will point out that I was not contacted by the chair to find out what committees I wanted to be on, or if I want to be on others, if those are added to have 7 people. I will serve where I am put, and I'm happy to do so. I do want to say, though, Supervisor Stroud had some questions back in December about how are the committees developed? Should the formation receive advice and consent of the board? Should we develop a process for committee chair assignments that would be fair and minimize the politicization of this process? And I don't believe any of those questions were addressed, and that's why we are here today having some of the debate that we are having today in this committee.
Okay,
I appreciate the time.
We learned a lot from last year. Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you, Supervisor Stroud. I think we've learned a lot from the last decade and many of the different rules of the board. I'd like to talk about this proposed change, but I would also like to highlight that in 2019, Supervisor Conover, then chair, had the rules of the board so that the chair picked the first and the second. Supervisor Thomas changed it. I did not touch that. But last year, there was much controversy in February because the supervisors were not aware, even after reading these rules, apparently. I remember Supervisor Stroud, you brought it up that how come the chairs didn't get to pick their vice chairs? But they did. Same thing. They had to do it by the 3rd Friday, no later than the date of the first regular board meeting, or held on the 3rd Friday, which has been struck in here from the current chairman. So even though we followed all these rules last year, this still became an issue in February or May, and we went back and let committees pick their chairs. So I don't know why we're looking at this again, since it was such a hot topic last year and everyone wanted to pick their own vice chairs. But I will say this, yes, while we can debate if we're not a member of a committee, we cannot vote, Supervisor Conover. We are here with the privilege to be able to make comments, and then the full board meeting to represent our constituents with a weighted vote and debate once again at that point in time. There have been some significant changes in the rules of the board this year, not unlike last year. And at this point in time, I would also say that the inferences that are being made about good spirit, good intent, I would caution very carefully for this board to recognize that while someone might say the world isn't ending, it's not the end of the world to a vice chair I'm not a vice chair of any committee, but maybe it's really important to me or really important to a vice chair. So if things are important to us or to our constituents, they should be addressed here at the board. But given the fact that Supervisor Bramer just brought up the ARPA meeting, I would respectfully ask a member of this committee for a motion to lay on the table so that the ARPA committee could meet and then come back to this serious debate, which is so important and the way that we operate as a board. But I think that it is very disrespectful to ARPA as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think that, listen, I said, we can spend another 3 hours on this subject. The point was made. I think the committee, Frank, myself, other members of the committee said we don't have any problem with having it that the chair selects the first chair and the vice chair of the committee, and if they don't, then the chairman does. I think that addressed the issue. I believe it addresses the issue. I don't hear Mr. Garrett, see Mr. Garrett jumping up and down saying absolutely not. So let's move on. That's my point. We can listen to another hours of speeches, or we can deal with the issue that's brought up to us, which is what we're supposed to do. Let's move on. And my feeling is, I'm good with that.
All right, so you're
Frank's good with it.
proposing, for the sake of keeping peace in the family,
Absolutely.
that we change and say that the chair of the committee can go in turn, pick the vice chair and so forth.
And if the chair elects not to do that, then it falls.
So we should
Chairman
change
of the
the
board.
wording to be in accord with that.
Absolutely. And I'm good with that. And
Ben, or-
relative to
Yeah.
Mr. McGowan's concern in this regard, I think it addresses that concern.
Okay. All right, Supervisor McGowan?
Yeah, follow up. I believe there should be a correction on that. I don't feel it was a speech. I think it was more debate. But the other thing is to be held on the third Friday of January. Now, here it is Tuesday, and we're going to be debating on this. And I don't think some of the chairs have had the opportunity to really think after reading this, well, this is going to be all scratched out, and that's not going to happen. So can we change that, third Friday of January?
That's what we're here today to try and work out as much as we can.
Because I don't know if it's going to be able to.
We're not going to agree on everything. We
I
know
know.
that.
But I mean, you're talking by the time we end tonight at 9.
You're
That's-
pizza.
I have planning board tonight, so I'll have to excuse myself because I don't want to miss that.
All right, well, I'm trying to move things.
But I mean, no, and I understand, but I'm just saying is that the third Friday is at the end of this week. Will that give all the committees an opportunity to put in their,
I'll leave that up to the chairman to do that, and I think he can. Okay. Can we move on? Unless you have something else? Supervisor Seaver, can we move on?
Well, I don't hear you addressing his concern. Why can't it be before February 1st? If we're going to meet on Friday, and to Supervisor Conover's point, I too wasn't
The attorney pointed out it had to be.
I'm sorry. I know, I'll be really quick. I know you want to cut off my sentence, but if you don't mind,
Oh, no, I
thanks so much. I appreciate it, Supervisor Stroud. My point was, I don't think you addressed Supervisor McGowan's question, which was, if this Friday you end up with more board members on committees, how do you know that chair may not want a different vice chair, and now they won't be able to do it because it's the third Friday of the month? I mean, I too was not contacted by the chairman about any possible committees. And I think that the standing rules should reflect a comment in that section that says the chair of the board shall contact all committee members, all board members, to talk with them about maybe they don't have the time to be on more. And I'm not complaining about 2. I mean, maybe I don't have the time to be on more than 2, but we should at least be afforded as members of a board a right to talk to the chairperson. And I believe Supervisor Stroud, you were adamant about that all year long. So I would love for the board rules to reflect that. That would be great.
think we all know why.
Excuse
Right.
me?
Chairman.
That's, Mr. Chairman, that's out of line as the chair of this committee.
Supervisor Conover.
I agree.
There could be language that says that each chair shall elect to exercise that option. So if I'm chair, if I elect it, then I'm saying I want to appoint the first chair and the vice chair. Well, I can take my sweet time doing that, but if I'm electing that, that means that I'm accepting that as a response. I've already sent a memo to Amanda saying I just keep the first chair and second chair that I appointed last year. And so as far as I'm concerned, you know, all I have to do is elect that's what I want to do. Frankly, whoever was chairperson of the board, I probably would say, how would you like to proceed? Wouldn't matter who's chairperson of the board. I probably would say that. And they say, and any chair I've ever dealt with in the past would say, well, you know, let me know what you want. Let me know how you want to proceed. I mean, that's the kind of process that I'm familiar with. When Kevin and Jean wanted to be on Public Works, I was asking, what do you think about going to 7 people? I said, absolutely. Jean used to chair Public Works. There's not a more experienced person than Kevin Carey. I said, I'd be thrilled to have the committee go from 5 to 7. I mean, that's how I think we've done. That's why we do so well. That's why we've operated so well for so long.
Okay,
So if you want to put in their language that each chair shall elect to exercise that option.
well, I think that we landed on will allow the chair of each committee to decide their succession, the vice chair and so forth. Okay, so I think that is what we've agreed to do. Supervisor McGowan?
Right, I do agree with that. We did agree to that, and I am fully fair. Now, unfortunately, not everyone is aware and have the condition of time that you have in your position and understand of pushing forward. Some of us are not, don't have that veteran in us yet, but the other thing I want to talk about is, you know, the 3rd of Friday. Can we make it by the 1st of February?
I don't know if there's any rules prohibiting that, or if there's an explanation. Yes, Administrator Moore.
I'll do my best to answer that question, and if I may, to suggest a language for this section based on what I understand the committee wanting to do. The reason why it's the 3rd Friday, that coincides with the board meeting, the January board meeting, and these committees need to be in place for the following Monday because the committee meetings start on the Monday. So that's why when this change was made to allow the committee chairs under Frank's leadership to allow the committee chairs to make these decisions. That was why we settled on making sure that information was into Amanda. What I hear coming from this committee is that everything in paragraph 3 that's in blue essentially is rejected. So you're not going to put the 2nd member appointed shall serve as vice chair and the 3rd member appointed shall serve as 2nd vice chair. Everything that is lined out comes back. And then a final sentence, each chair may elect not to make these appointments and instead allow the chair of the board to do so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Much thanks.
Okay. Let's move on. Page 7 of 9. Page 7 of 9 just says that a meeting of any committee may be called, and that shall be held that a majority of the members of the committee sign a written notice to conduct the meeting. And it mailed was scratched. Emailed remains the notice. Number 5, members of the board may attend any regular or special meeting member as a member of the general public, but no member of the board except the chair of the board shall sit as part of a committee for which they're not appointed or participate in a committee meeting as a member of the committee unless appointed to that committee as a member. And 6, change down towards the lower part during a committee meeting after the chair becomes a member by virtue of the criteria set above. 7, just add standing or special committee clarification. And some scratches just to update page 7. Any thoughts on the materials presented, the rules presented on page 7? Yes, Supervisor Hogan.
I just have a quick question. Does that in any way preclude members who are not on that committee from sitting in the executive sessions as has been our past
No, I
practice?
think that by law, you're allowed to sit into an executive session as elected official.
Okay, thank you.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the case. Any Supervisor Siebel?
Thank you. Again, I want to be respectful to the ARPA committee. So on Friday, I'm happy to debate 5, 6, and partial 7 in the interest of time. But 5, I hope that last year we talked about Supervisor Strauss, you asked to look at the 1968 local law number 1 and make revisions of duty of the chair. So I trust that your committee this year will spend significant time talking about modifying local law 1 of 1968 duties of the chair. Why is number 5 even added? It's an administrative change. Was that added by Amanda, Ryan, or Larry? And if so, why?
I can't add who added that.
If I may, it was added to bring the board into compliance with open meetings law. There's regular occasions where at committee meetings, supervisors sit at the table and it appears as if they're part of the committee. And there are more supervisors present at the table than 10, which creates the appearance that it's a board meeting under open meetings law. So 5 is added out of a sensitivity that there is a regular appearance to the public that a quorum is present for the Board of Supervisors to conduct business during committee meetings. For example, earlier today, when a supervisor was appearing by video, there were over 11 supervisors between the table and the video. So the concern is the committee actually constituting a quorum under open meetings law to conduct business when there's 11 or more supervisors present at the table. So the goal is to avoid that appearance while the meetings occur in this room going forward.
Thank you.
Just may I ask, you weren't suggesting that we physically then move away from the table. You're saying you're putting this into writing so that it clarifies that we aren't violating open meeting laws. And I assume the same also applies to committees where many, many times over the years, there's been a violation of open meeting laws with too many members of the board having outside committee meetings.
I believe there was an administrative discussion regarding both,
I don't understand what that answer means.
meaning there would be a recommendation administratively that only committee members, while we're in this room, sit at the table, so there is no confusion as to who's on the committee for purposes of open meetings law.
So last year during this, last year I brought up the discussion of putting the middle table in and that was rejected, or going back to the committee room and that was rejected. So now we're going to have an administrative decision by whom that we can't now sit at a desk and take what if you have more members of the public and social distancing with COVID?
There's no decision administratively, just a recommendation that we don't create the appearance of a quorum being present of the Board of Supervisors during committee meetings.
Supervisor Thomas?
Yeah, I think if that's the intent and that's the case, then these committee meetings need to move back to the committee room. And then the committee members will sit around the table and discuss it, and the chair will sit up in the front in the committee room and stop abusing this room and stop acting like this is a committee room, because this is not a committee room. This is a board room. So unless you're going to put a table back in here like it used to be, so that the committee members sit at the table and discuss the issues and everybody knows who's on the committee, and the people that are on Zoom get in here and participate in their committee meetings, then I don't see why we need this. I think we should get back to what we're here to do. And that's to meet down there with committee meetings and to meet here for the board meetings, period.
I think COVID come into play as part of that, right?
Or put that table in the middle like we talked about last year.
Okay, Supervisor.
Just
Driscoll.
very quickly, an individual is on the committee for the fourth committee meeting on a particular day, and the first three are running an hour late. I mean, where the heck are we supposed to be going? To the coffee room? A lot of the meetings run late. I mean, we're going to have a doorman saying that you can't go in until, that particular meeting gets over. I just don't understand how it can be enforced.
Okay, all right, so I think the consensus of the committee is that the paragraph added by county attorney should stay in. Okay. Anything else on page 7 and 9? Yes.
Can I just ask one more time for clarification and confirmation from the county
Sure.
attorney that that does not preclude the board members that are in the room from participating in executive session? The language that you put here, will it or will it not allow board members who are not members of committees to participate in the executive sessions, as has been our past practice?
Paragraph 5 does not address that issue.
Okay, just wanted to be absolutely clear.
Supervisor Seaver?
I'm confused. I think I heard you say that 5 should stay in, but what I just heard from Supervisor Thomas, who's a member of the committee, or Supervisor Driscoll, who I think is a member of the committee, is that, then why do you need 5? Let's get back to doing the things how we did them before, or put a committee table in the middle of this room as to adjust it last year then. But now you're gonna have it where we can't sit here.
Which is more comfortable, may I say.
Well, I just mean for work purposes,
Right.
but I mean, we talked about this all last year and everyone rejected it. So I'm interested to see how 5 is here now, and that's an administrative decision, and now but it doesn't make sense. I mean, I can argue it Friday, it's fine. It's not a big deal. And I'll move on to 6 on Friday too and save us some time with quorums. Move on to 7 on Friday and save us some time. So I guess I don't have any more questions on 7.
So to clarify 5, if it says after the comma on line 3, or participate in a committee meeting as a voting member of the committee, maybe that clarifies the concerns that the county administrator and I are hearing on that paragraph. The purpose of 5 is merely to make the board aware and the committees aware of the appearance of violating open meetings law.
Yes, Supervisor Thomas.
Well, again, and that gets back to the committees meeting at a table, whether it's in here, whether it's down there. I don't think it's appropriate to ask the supervisors to come in the boardroom and then sit over here just to give the appearance on Zoom or to anybody that's here that these are the only people on the committee. Well, that's all well and fine, but this is the boardroom. I was elected to be here. So I feel I can come sit at this table, period. I don't have to sit back over here because the committee meeting's going on. We have a facility down here to do that, or we can accommodate it right here. And I think that's how it should be done. I don't think we should be playing, playing games with the seats here just to, make it what it is. There's the committee or there's the committee. And stop, writing rules to accommodate our order. I don't think it's, and if we need more equipment, we go buy more equipment. What's the problem? We got what, over $12 million here. I mean, You know, let's get it done.
Amen.
Supervisor McGowan.
In that case, I like the idea of setting up a committee table right here in front, and in that way, everybody can bring their iPad that's on the committee, and the other people that want to join in on the committees, because it is kind of important to be at the committee meetings where it all starts, then that way, the public can actually say, that's the committee, and this is, because it's so much easier to work and do your paper and follow through than sitting in the other room. Unless we want to change some seating over there, make it a little bit more comfortable and have a little table to work on, but you know, with the Zoom and everything going on, the people that are sitting over here, this is much easier than trying to look up over there and look over here and look at your paperwork.
Well, we can, yeah, I think we all understand what, the county attorney trying to tell us is that, appearances are everything. We should make an effort to make the appearance look more like a committee meeting, and the rest of us are just to listen in. Not that that precludes us from speaking, nor does it preclude us from being in executive session. He's just saying the appearance is that it's one big meeting and that everyone present is present the way that we have it set up. So Brad, I agree with you. We could work out what we used to have is the table in the middle. I think county attorney is just saying we should think about that. I don't think we need to address it as part of our rules, but I understand what you're saying and I agree with it. All right. Is there anything else on page 7 and 9? Now, the only change I've noted on page 7 is that we're going to put voting members should be sitting apart from as a committee together, and that appearance should be separate from the other members who are not committee members, but our board of supervisor members. It's okay, county attorney, and so we'll add that wording you suggested. Okay.
And that's it, you don't need, that's so easily done. You take the first 7 chairs,
I just thinking of that.
the first 7 chairs over there, the first 7, last 7 over here. Mark them off for the committee, and so you're not sitting at your desk, you're sitting at Gene's desk or Ben's desk or whatever. You mark it off, you cordon it off. These things are easily done.
All right, we can work that matter out. The concerns of the county attorney are noted, and I think they're addressed, and we'll have to work out some kind of format. Nothing in page 7 of 9, nothing else? Committee or otherwise? All right, page 8. Page 8.
I would like the record to reflect that in the interest of time and respect for ARPA, I'll argue 6 and 7 at the board meeting on Friday. And on page 8, yes, I do. Any changes this committee makes, could it be made in green, please? So that when we get this before the board meeting, we know what changes the committee made here today?
So the rest will be black except for what we talked about today.
No, sir, I'm not saying that. The red is helpful, even though it's not broken out into the admin, legal, or clerk, but the blue was the chair, the red was the county admin, but any changes made today, could they be made in green that are approved by the committee?
It stand out, yeah.
So it stands out?
I think so. Yeah, I think we can do that. Can we do that?
Sure.
The changes that we made today would be in green.
Yep.
So we got red, blue, and now they'll be green. Okay. Anything for page 8? Yes, Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you.
No others?
Number 7, I'd like to know why the chairman has decided to remove the 2/3 majority for creating new positions. That they can only, before it was, they could only be created by 2/3. Now it's going to be created by a simple majority. In the past, I've been told by veteran supervisors how important it was to have that 2/3 there, especially from a budget perspective and creating new positions that they can have a long-standing legacy cost. I'm completely opposed to removing that. And again, we'll bring it up on Friday, but was hopeful that the committee would entertain keeping that the way it was before.
All right, Ms. Allen.
I can speak to that one. That was something that was put in there in 2008 or 2009 to require a 2/3 majority for creating positions. When we did meet on it, the chair and when we met administratively, everyone agreed that they go through finance, they go through personnel. The problem that we were having with these is that they end up on the amending the table of organization resolution. So not everything that's on that table of organization requires a 2/3 majority. So if you have 15 positions that you're just amending somehow and one position that you're creating, if it fails, all of them fail. So we thought that it went through enough other checks and balances that the 2/3 majority at the board level might not be necessary any longer. That's why it was taken out.
May I?
Yeah.
Ms. Allen, thank you for that explanation, but I also recall in the past that a easy solution to that would just be to separate out the ones that would require a 2/3 so that we don't risk the other ones failing. And now with the checks and balances, you have your personnel officer being your budget chair and your, and the committee structure, how it is. I don't know what it will be approved on Friday. Seems to me having the 2/3 majority stay in intact for creating new positions would be critical, and just separate out those so that the others do not fail, which we have done before to avoid problems with that as well. So I don't understand why that can't happen.
We can do it however this board decides to do it.
So my argument would then still be, would you please keep the 2/3 and separate out the ones that need a 2/3 so you don't risk the other things failing that don't need a 2/3 on the table of organization. I'm not on the committee.
All right, let's see what the committee feels. Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, I mean, we are a government where, except under certain circumstances, bonding, things like that, where a majority rules. I don't understand the public purpose of the 2/3 as part of an administrative operation. It just seems to me that that's, why segregate that? Why not? You could do, I suppose you could apply it to all our decisions. I mean, why that decision? Why not all our decisions? I mean, it just doesn't seem, to me, it's an issue without a point, is my point. Yeah, if I could hear an explanation other than long-term implications, every position we fill, every expenditure of taxpayer dollars has possible long-term implications. So I think the idea of taking this into the majority decision is where it belongs. So,
All right, so majority opinion's fine with you. Supervisor Driscoll, 2/3 or majority for new position.
The majority, I think it's just an easier process. to be
Supervisor
consistent with
Thomas?
Each other.
Well, the 2/3 was put in to, to create a new position, to make it more difficult to create a new position. It wasn't to, and that was the whole point of it. I guess if we're flush with money, I guess, we can go back to majority.
So you prefer keeping the 2/3 vote required?
I would, yeah.
Okay. So Supervisor McGowan?
Thank you. Yeah, just to make it short, I will say ditto to Supervisor Seaver, that I see it staying at a 2/3.
Okay, Supervisor Seaver?
Yes, thank you. Again, just a word of caution, an issue without a point is subjective. I do believe my issue has a point here, and it's that even when you were Chair Supervisor Conover, many times I was talked to about the importance of this 2/3 majority with creating new positions, particularly as it surrounded the debacle and the discussion about the nursing home and the sale thereof. So I, again, would say 2/3, there is a point to this, that when you create a position, it is a long-term impact to the budget, not only with benefits, retirement, and salaries. And as we just saw, we have hundreds of thousands of dollars of salaries that we're talking about even now in a chart on salary ranges. When we create positions, they don't just go away. So it's important that it's a 2/3. But if you're saying that we're aboard a simple majority, then why isn't changing the standing rules a simple majority all year long? I mean, it doesn't make sense. In one way, you're saying a 2/3 is important, and in another, it's not. So
So
Okay,
let's-
all right,
Let's
so,
dissect this. I just want to make sure we're
I was talking through the chair.
on the
I
side-
guess I'm
on
done.
the correct section.
Well-
We're talking about item 7, and we're talking about the last sentence or two in item 7 on page 8 of 9. Is that correct?
No,
we're talking about, yeah, paragraph 7, right?
7,
First
okay.
the first
And
sentence.
so let's, if we can, let's just take a little bit of time here. It says the filling of the existing vacant position will be authorized with the following approvals. We'll go through the different approvals. It says all vacant positions authorized to be filled in accordance with the procedures set forth in these rules shall be reported each month on the personnel committee agenda. If filling of the existing vacant position is denied by any of the above processes, only 2/3 vote of the county board of supervisors can fill the existing vacant position. Am I reading this correctly?
Well, I think it's simple. For a new position, should we require a majority or a 2/3 vote to approve that new position? What's being suggested here, for the sake of resolutions and the way they've been put together, but I think that can be easily changed, is that we keep the wording in there that's there. In other words, filling of existing vacant positions, not new positions. These can only be created by 2/3 majority vote of the board, will only be authorized. In other words, keep in that scratched line.
One more time. Keep in what now?
Yes, you see where it's been,
Keep the blue in.
yeah, keep the blue in. Keep it simple. And Frank prefers that. Rachel, Brad,
So what we're saying is that, if I'm clear, so I know what I'm going, so what we're saying is that the request was that the creation of all new positions, not part of our governmental structure, our organizational structure, will continue to require a 2/3 vote.
yeah,
But the filling of existing vacant positions, whether funded or not funded, is by simple majority. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Is that correct? I mean, we're talking about here
We're
about,
only talking about new positions here, right? So is that wording clear enough? It does say new. New position.
May I?
Yeah.
That was my only question in the beginning, Supervisor Strauss, Supervisor Conover, was could you please leave it as a 2/3 to create a new position?
Well,
Sounds like the committee,
the committee split, but if you look at what I'm hearing from others, they'd be more comfortable leaving it in. I don't think it's earth shaking if we leave it in. I think Frank, Supervisor Thomas makes a great point that you don't want to easily create these positions. The 2/3, as Supervisor Thomas said, is to make it very clear that this board is in support, really feels the need for this new position. I don't see any problem with that either, but I don't think I'm allowed to get in the debate, but
I think that if that's what we're saying, the normal operations of government continue, but the creation of exclusively new positions that are not part of our existing organizational structure by 2/3, I can agree with that. I can
okay.
agree with that.
Supervisor
I
Driscoll?
can agree with that point. I just want it clearly understood that I just don't want
Yeah.
our existing operations hampered by.
Well,
you know,
that's the way I'm
extreme.
reading it. I think it's pretty clear, but the county administrator, the county attorney can chip in here. But first of all, are you comfortable with that? Okay. So Supervisor Driscoll is comfortable with leaving the language in, and that the creation of a new position will require 2/3 of the Board of Supervisors to approve that new position. Are we okay with understanding this? And Ms. Allen, we're just gonna have to put a separate resolution in for these new positions.
Sure.
Because they will require 2/3 vote. Okay? Anything else on page 8 of 9? Yes, Supervisor Seeger.
I'm going to reserve my right to debate 5-2 on Friday in the interest of time for the ARPA committee. Or F2, excuse me.
F2,
Yep.
during 2022, no standing rule of the board shall be rescinded, suspended, amended, or any additional rule or added thereto unless be 2/3. Yeah, for any changes for this going forward.
I understand what it means, Supervisor Stroud. My point is I'll debate it on Friday out of respect for the ARPA committee. I do want to address F1. I'm really taken back by this, that we have to have our chair of the board approve a proclamation request, that as a member of the board, we can't bring forward a request for a proclamation, that it can be denied now by the chair. And I think that should be stricken and should be addressed when we look at the 1968 rules of the board for the duties of the chair this year.
I agree.
Proclamations are incredibly important. And this past year, we have had so many community members, many of you sitting in this room or on this board, talking about the impact that those proclamations have had to outside organizations. I forget how many we did, but there were significant numbers, and we went to great lengths to include personalized information and honor our organizations. And that comes not from one person coming up from that, but it came from asking many members of the community and the board what we could do, including our first regional proclamation. So this actually is somewhat offensive, I believe, to our community. I'll argue it on Friday, but I wondered if you'd prefer to take it out now.
All right, so let me understand. We're on F1. Upon the request of any member of the Board of Supervisors, with the approval of the chair of the board, which is the addition, the clerk of the board shall draft a proclamation of acknowledgement. So in other words, you're just asking the chair to approve the proclamation. And you don't want that? Any proclamation can be brought forward by any member of the Board of Supervisors?
Absolutely, Supervisor Stroud. We are all elected by the people in this community. We all serve our constituents, and we've all earned that opportunity to sit before our board and ask for a proclamation to be considered. Should a member want to argue that a proclamation not be approved at a board, they should have that right to say whether it offends them or not, or whatever the case is. But in my experience, to have to seek permission from the chair of the board to bring forward a proclamation is offensive to my constituents.
Well, there are some proclamations that might be brought forward that some members of the Board of Supervisors would be uncomfortable.
We can vote no then. They don't have, we can have that debate.
We've never voted on a proclamation.
Why not?
It's just
You
come
could.
forward.
You could have all year long. I asked all year for people.
I didn't see any vote. Anybody asked me for a vote on them.
Anyone
Not
at
that I
any
would have
time could
voted
object.
against them, but I'm just saying.
Sure. Well, so then why do we need this here?
Administrator Moore.
Thanks. Let me add some context to this as to when this was discussed with the individuals who made these proposed changes, the chair, Larry, me, Amanda. The intent here was not to undermine any supervisor's input into the process. The intent was to prevent a situation where you may have a position expressed in a proclamation that's not representative of what the Board of Supervisors, the position that the Board of Supervisors would have. So it's essentially a firewall to when you have, if you have something like that, where there's about to be a proclamation that is a matter of controversy that the board may not agree on, that the chair would have discretion to say this is better appropriate for a committee discussion and an eventual board resolution, rather than a proclamation that just by virtue of being an elected member of the board, you make the request, the proclamation has to be put in. And I don't know whether in practice that's the way it actually works, where any proclamation that's ever been requested has been added to our agenda, or whether there has been a different process we've used.
Right. In practice, it's always been someone would come in, ask for a proclamation, a certificate, whatever, and you send it to the chair. The chair, I haven't ever heard of the chair saying no. And I mean, Mr. Driscoll, I remember when you first came, there were a few times that you asked for proclamations, and I told you whatever chair was at the time, we forwarded it to that person. They approved it. I wrote the proclamation. It was signed off. So I don't think it was a matter of trying to stop anyone from doing a proclamation. I think it was just cleaning up the process that we use.
Yes.
Just very quickly. Yeah, I did do that, and I asked, who the go-to person is to Amanda. But I've got every bit of confidence that all of my colleagues recognize what's the proclamation for a good deed or a good individual or that type of stuff, and we'll stay away from anything that is remotely political or controversial. I haven't seen it in my 4 years up here. Of course, I'm not privy to all of the requests that are made. That borders on the ethics, and I think that I'd like to believe that we're all ethical and we're going to do the right thing and just offer suggestions on what we would like to see for proclamations. I think the Chairwoman Seaver did an outstanding job of making sure that we reached out to a wide variety of community partners and individuals who enhance our jobs in serving the people. And I don't think it's necessary to get that so-called permission from the top dog, but let's make, as Mr. Moore said, there also has to be at least a firewall, some type of a firewall, just to make sure that it doesn't happen.
I agree with you. Supervisor Conover?
So just
I don't see the harm in removing this, and if it becomes a problem, we'll deal with it when it becomes a problem. I don't think it's been a problem that I'm aware of, and so as far as I'm concerned, in order to try to maintain some harmony here, like we did the other issue, as far as I'm concerned, this can be deleted.
All right, so
The upside
Supervisor,
is it may be a proclamation that perhaps a particular chair is not fully in concert with, but it doesn't require his or her approval.
all right, so you're saying delete for the sake of keeping peace. Supervisor Driscoll agrees. Supervisor Thomas?
I think it's just stating what happens.
It is what happens. I mean,
So
who
I
approved
don't
the
have a problem.
proclamations that came before us all last year? Supervisor Seaver, can I ask you a
Of
question?
course you can. Every proclamation that was asked of me was put forward before this board. Never was there a denial. It's just by adding this language, you're really, someone said a firewall, but it's stonewalling. This is not a firewall. This is if a chair doesn't agree with me or that I think something's important to my constituency, then they're going to say, no, you can't do it. I think that is inappropriate and you should strike it. And then if you want to put with the vote of a board resolution, have the board vote on it. But the clerk should coordinate them, and this process should be the same for certificates. The clerk coordinated many certificates last year that we gave out, and overwhelmingly our community appreciated the presence of our chair. And if our chair couldn't be there, the delegation to other people. Every single member of this board was asked to go to different events throughout the course of the year to present certificates and at some points proclamations.
But one good point was brought up about a firewall in the sense that, there is some kind of control over what goes before this board to make sure that it is representative of the way we feel.
So we should debate it and vote on it then. Here you say without the need of a board. So you're allowing the chair to make that, it says it right here, sir.
I think we can delete it.
You said.
John,
I'm
I think,
sorry, in your
I think we can
numbers.
delete that.
All right, so.
We'll delete
let's
that
delete
section.
that.
If it becomes an issue, we'll deal with it.
Administrator
I don't think it will be.
Moore,
Thank-
did you have anything you wanted to say? All right, but the board seems comfortable with deleting that phrase.
Yeah, I was just gonna, what I was gonna do is make a suggestion if the committee's willing to entertain it. But the same way you could accomplish what was trying to be accomplished here is if any member of the board can request that a proclamation goes on, the proclamation goes on the agenda. But all you would have to do is make it so that it's not necessarily an automatic approval. Just have the board vote on the proclamations, and that would accomplish the same objective.
I think that's fair. All right, so during 2022, upon the request of any board member of the Board of Supervisors, the clerk of the board shall draft a proclamation of acknowledgement, congratulations, commendation, or otherwise recognizing a particular person, achievements, causes, events on behalf of the board for execution by the chair without the need
No.
for a board resolution. So we need to say with a board resolution.
How about upon approval by the Board of Supervisors?
Yeah, upon approval by the board of supervisors. Okay, anything else on page 8 of 9? Last page. Page 9 of 9. Any thoughts on what's being proposed? Basically, it's just adding 5, eliminating what was there. The rules of the board shall continue in full force and effect unless and until a new act of rules is adopted by the board. The new language says, rules of the board for 2022, along with any amendments or additions thereto, shall continue in full force and effect until the end of the organizational meeting for the ensuing year, or an adjourned organizational meeting upon the ensuing board enacting rules of the board by a majority vote for the ensuing year. Absent the ensuing board adopting rules of the board for the ensuing year, the 2022 rules of the board shall sunset and expire on January 31st of the ensuing year. Okay, Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. Back to County Attorney Elman. By putting or any adjourned organizational meeting, then aren't you saying what we just did, then the rules from the prior year would be in effect?
They remain in effect until the incoming board enacts their own rules for the coming year. Therefore, they're not being bound by the prior year's rules. And it's consistent, I believe, with the state statute under County Law 151 regarding organizational meetings of the board.
I have additional questions on these that I'll speak with you about to talk about this on Friday. And I also have a laundry list of other items that I've put forward to this board for consideration in our standing rules. I won't debate them here today, but again, we'll try on Friday out of consideration for the ARPA committee. But I appreciate you talking about the proclamations.
Okay, anything else? The rules of the board? All right, well, we have one more item on the agenda. Do I need to go over the rules of the board and the changes being suggested?
I don't think you need to go over them again, but you would need a motion, a second, and a vote to get these approved because we'll need a resolution for Friday.
All right, so does anybody want me to go over the changes? You're okay with that? Frank?
Yeah, I'll put forward a motion that we adopt the rules of the board as amended here today.
Okay, a second to that motion, Supervisor Conover. All those in favor of moving forward the rules of the board as we've amended today, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? All right, passes the committee unanimously. Move forward. The other item on our agenda is basically the question, which I think is moved, but do we want a vice chair? That's the question. Any thoughts on committee? Yes, Supervisor Conover?
I see no reason to exercise this provision. We have a local law. It empowers the finance chair with all the authorities and powers. Have the county attorney go on in detail of what that local law is and what it says. And I see no reason why at this moment in time that we feel the need to have to exercise that particular provision of county law. Yeah, I don't see the need. I don't see the need, and perhaps whoever wants to make the argument should address the need, because I think that's the question. And so, if we're going to have an election create a chair that has no authority and, or very little authorities and responsibilities, because it's all invested by local law in the finance chair, then what's the need? And so whoever wants to address the need, if they could be as succinct as possible, this committee person would appreciate it.
All right, here we go. The local law 1 of 1968. Chair of Supervisor Driscoll, any thoughts before I go outside the committee?
No, nothing.
Frank, any thoughts? Supervisor Thomas, any thoughts before I go outside the committee?
I think it's been addressed in the proposed rules on, be specific on page 3.
Yeah. Okay, those outside the committee want to share their thoughts with us? Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you. I'll be as succinct as possible, Supervisor Conover. I'm sorry, I thought I had the floor. You're welcome, though. I did make this point when I brought it up at the organizational meeting. There is a gap here. In your committees, you have a first vice chair and a second vice chair. Now, the issues that all came up last year were because I listened at caucus, the Democrats listened at their caucus. We all came forward and said we want more vice chairs. Came forward, the answer from our legal and our county admin was we can't have more vice chairs. So here we back are talking about vice chairs. In your committees, you're so worried about who is going to continue to operate your committees. If your chair isn't there, you have a vice chair, you have a second vice chair, but you don't have that at your full board meetings. In fact, you had a period of 7 days, or some years 8 days, some years 10 days, where you don't even have a chair operating when we turn over to a new board. So my question and my point on this is simply that for continuing of operations, have a third person. And so a vice chair, now the law affords us to have a majority, the law affords us to have a minority, the law affords us to have a vice chair, and the law affords us to either pay for a budget officer and hire them or appoint a budget officer. Out of all four, the only ones this board decides to take into consideration is the budget officer. So if we're going to talk about the vice chair, if you're not going to appoint a vice chair because everyone's so worried about apparently them not having any duties, which of course your chair could assign whatever duties they would like to help them throughout the year and to build continuity between fractions on the board. But if this committee isn't interested in that with the vice chair certainly could act as a third person in line so that during a pandemic, when your chair or your finance chair is not available, or you have emergency meetings, or you have other things that come up, which happened all the time last year, you would in fact have a third person in the same way that your committee structure has them, as a chair, a first vice, and a second vice. All I'm saying is if you don't want to do that, which I am in favor of, if you don't, would you please assign them perhaps a personnel chair who's also the budget officer, and maybe that's a conflict, or perhaps someone else is your third person in charge. So if your chair and your finance chair are unavailable, this board doesn't have to come together with the majority of the board to call a meeting to elect a temporary chair and just have a third person so that your operations continue and this county isn't left without leadership during that period of time. That's all.
Okay, Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, thank you for being succinct,
You're welcome.
and I'll try to be succinct as
Thank
well.
you.
There was no articulation of need that I heard other than possibly creating a third tier should the chair and the vice chair be unable to operate. And so what I would say to those interests that are losing sleep over this,
Come on, Rob.
work with the county administrator, the county attorney, develop an amendment to the local law that adds to the local law some language relative to what's already there relative to the finance chair. And if that local law after public hearing gets adopted by this board, that will be the law of the land. And that is how it should happen. And I don't think that we should be exercising some outside provision of state law, state and county law, in defiance of our local law. And so what I would say to you is this: you have a right to your opinion, supervisors. Pursue it. correct way to pursue it is to move to amend the local law. And so this committee member is going to be opposed to any exercise of that provision of law. And I'm prepared today to introduce a motion, if that's what's required, that states that. And that can be sent to the board, and we can vote on that as well. Because, look, we all know what brings us here today to this issue. And if we're going to get into it, then let's get into it.
I'd rather not get into it, but the bottom line of what you're saying is you're opposed to the creation of a vice chair at this time.
I'm opposed to it because we have a vice chair in the form of a local law that designates those powers as part of the chairman of finance. It goes into great detail. And again, we can have the attorney read you all the powers that are then for invested in the chairman of finance.
So no need to create a vice chair at this time. Supervisor Driscoll,
I would support that.
Supervisor Thomas,
I concur.
okay. Supervisor McCaskill.
Well, it sounds like the hierarchy has spoken.
Well, the committee gets the first.
No, I understand that, but because I happen to be here at that meeting
We're gonna have some fun now, Frank.
and
I got a board meeting, so better make it quick.
I have one too.
Hit the road then.
So, but our attorney did say the word may. We have that option to do it. And, you know, right from the start, it was knocked down. So, you know, I understand the procedures that are going on here now. And, you know, I have to say, it's really disheartening of the controls that I see that are going on here. So that's all I want to say. It's a may.
All right. Thank you. Yes, Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Stroud. I'm going to hold my remarks back to Friday. I've been listening to the whole meeting. There's a number of areas which I have very deep concerns about. And for the sake of time, which is now 5:10, I will withhold those. But I do want to be on record stating that I want to have the ability, Mr. Chairman, I see you're here. I want to have the ability to speak to these in length and in depth on Friday's board meeting. Do I have that assurance from you? Speak about a number of the issues in the standing committee rules and so forth. Okay, so I have your commitment that I will have the time allotted to me on Friday's meeting to go into detail on the number of these issues that I have very deep concerns of. Thank you.
All right, so do we need to take a vote on this matter? To move it along to Board of Supervisors? Before the creation of a vice chair, which in turn is supporting the local 1968 as is. Supervisor Conover?
I would ask the county about if we not scattered send the resolution to that states that, and the board can act on that up or down.
The answer is two parts. The first part is this committee can pass any resolution they deem appropriate on the issue. The second part is under state law, the issue could be raised before the board on whether the board will pursue or vote on a vice chair that's presented to the board. So this committee certainly could do a resolution, but that does not prohibit the full board or members of the full board from a motion seeking to appoint a vice chair.
Well,
And just to clarify the reason is a resolution cannot trump state law when the county's local law is silent on the issue.
so, I mean, currently the setup is the finance chair will be the successor of the chair, should the chair not make it, and that's the current law. So I guess it could be brought from the floor that we create a vice chair position, and if it gets 2/3 of the vote of the Board of Supervisors, it will happen. We'll have to make it happen. So I don't know. I'm thinking we don't need to make any resolution at this time. I mean, it appears to be that the committee does not support the formation of a vice chair at this time.
Thank you, Chairman Stroud. I just wanted to clarify, I believe it's a simple majority at a board vote, same as it would be for chair. And maybe I misheard. I thought you might have said 2/3 vote, but my understanding is it would be the same as the vote for the chair.
I stand corrected. It will take a majority vote to create a vice chair. All right, thank you. So seeing no need for a resolution from the committee on this matter, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there any member of the public out there? It's been a year or so since I had a chair. But is there any member of the committee, of public that has any questions? No. Supervisor Bramer, no, you can't vote.
No, I can't, I know, I can't make your motion to adjourn, and I had to step out for part of the meeting. I wondered if you brought up the issue of the letter, the advocacy letter that was passed. Did it not pass? I'm sorry.
We didn't bring it up. Administrator Moore is going to speak to that. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request that comes from our planning department. It's a draft letter to Basil Sagos, the DEC commissioner, regarding requesting additional funding for the septic replacement program. And if it is the will of this committee to recommend that the chair of the septic committee sign that letter, then that's the ask for today. The letter is in front of you. It's at the back of your packet.
The only thing that I might suggest is that the letter did not make clear that we're also asking for other lakes other than Lake George to be considered in the allocation of septic, supplementing septic replacement funding. Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you. The letter from planning says Warren County also has many other lakes, rivers, and water bodies that are vital for our local community's economy and well-being and need protection. And our residents could certainly use funding to help defray the cost of those, all of those water bodies as well.
Oh, I stand corrected. Very good.
So I think I'm just looking for consensus from the committee to be able to sign this and send it out soon. So because of the budget
All right.
timing.
Good.
I don't think we
Okay
need a
with that?
resolution or anything, just consensus from the committee.
Supervisor Conover?
I am support.
Supervisor Driscoll?
Yep.
Supervisor Thomas, we're comfortable with that?
Yep, very much
All
so.
right, thank you for drafting
Before you
that letter.
adjourn, Mr.
Supervisor Bramer?
Chairman. Yeah, I think there should also be no consensus of the committee that we do not support the creation of a duplicative or some deputy chairman position. I think it's important that this committee has jurisdiction in this regard, that we communicate that.
So
If not by resolution, that it be communicated to the board at large.
So you're proposing a resolution that we're not,
I would say a resolution of the committee that we're now supportive of
the
this
creation
proposal.
of a vice chair at this time?
Right, I would make that as
Okay. Second to that motion?
I-
Supervisor Thomas?
I'm not seconding it. I would just say that I think the rules that we just adopted, I think pretty much says that.
I thought so too,
I
but
don't think we need a resolution.
if you want to put together a resolution and do that, I'm fine with that too. So we have a motion on the floor. We don't have a second.
so be it.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second.
The privilege of the floor. No privilege of the floor.
Supervisor Driscoll, all those in favor?
No privilege of the floor, okay.